Hey guys, welcome to the channel. As you see in the thumbnail, what if Nika Luffy got married with all girls part 2. Before I start, please do support for more awesome content and subscribe my channel and like this video. Go support and follow the Milo F Waters for writing that awesome fanfic, and also make sure to comment on this story, link in the description. Let's start this video. Luffy was happily lounging against their little ship's mast, his hat shading his eyes. Kobe sat in front, trying to read which way the wind was blowing. Makino was taking stock of the supplies in the hold below deck, knowing full well that Luffy had an appetite and a half. Is she still back there? Luffy asked. Yep, Makino answered. Would you prefer beef or chicken jerky? Beef, please. Who's still back there? That girl from the other ship. Kobe turned around, shocked to indeed see the Redeed was furiously paddling behind them. How'd you both do that? You didn't even look. They finally caught you, Nami panted, clearly exhausted. They had long since left Alvida's ship and cruise liner behind. Oh, hey. Sorry, didn't want any marines to catch us, Luffy explained. So, what do you want? Let me just get something straight. You are a pirate, right? Yep. But you don't rob people. Not unless they take something from me. Village towns? No. What's the point? Kill innocent people? No way. That's just sick. Nami just frowned, looking completely lost. Then what do you do? We have adventures. He's right, Makino agreed. You see, we wish to be a peace-main crew of pirates who don't cause trouble. We only fight if someone has wronged us in some way. Peace-main pirates? That's a thing. Since when? I don't know where the term started, but there have been several crews who follow a similar motto. The thief craned her eyebrow in doubt. Oh? Name one. Red-haired Shanks. Bull. He's one of the 4 emperors, one of the worst pirates out there. No, he's not. He's awesome. He gave me this hat. Nami immediately paled. You've actually met him and survived. Makino just laughed. Yes, I know he has an extremely high bounty somewhere in the billions. 4,048,900,000. She recited from memory. How could anyone with a bounty like that not be a walking disaster? Because he doesn't go around threatening people for no reason, Luffy shrugged, he does it protect his friends. Okay, then I guess the fact that you're still alive and even have his hat is proof enough. Nami pulled out a rope and began tying their boats together, Kobe assisting her as the duo of pirates didn't protest. So, since you are all nice, not jackass pirates, I was wondering if you'd be open to a deal. Yeah? What kind of deal? Simple. We become partners, splitting the loot 60-40 as we tear up other pirates. Or, even better. You beat them up and I cash in their bounties and give you a cut of the… Sorry, not interested, Luffy cut her off. Aw, come on. If you can beat Alvida that easily, just imagine the payday you'd get if you turned her in. We'll get treasure and stuff. Nami pouted at seeing her opportunity slip away only for Makino to speak up. Listen, we understand there is a lot of money to be made, but that's not necessarily what we're after. Pirates who turn down money. So Luffy, Kobe asked as Nami's brain shut off, you don't mind us going to the marine base in Shell's town? Nah, I'm good. Besides, I can't navigate anyway. Oh, this just keeps getting better and better. Luffy sighed and lifted his hat to see Nami's thoroughly baffled face and had to stifle a laugh. Can you navigate? I can do more than that. I'm the best navigator in the East Blue. Really? Yep. Then how about you join my crew and you can get treasure that way? No way. Makino chuckled as Luffy essentially turned into a child, pleading for Nami to reconsider, while the woman crossed her arms and sat facing the other way in her boat. And with each offer, the Redeed rebuffed and went on about how she would rather die than ever be a pirate. Anyway, what can you tell us about this base, Kobe? Oh, well, it's one of the largest in the East Blue. And they just caught one of the most fearsome bounty hunters in the sea. Bounty hunter? Luffy asked, his interest piqued. Yeah, the pirate huntress. Ugh, I get shivers just thinking about her. Wait, you mean Kuina, that pirate huntress? Nami gaped, but wait, she isn't a criminal. She might as well be. Kobe then went on and on about how terrifying this woman apparently was, yet never actually stated what crime she committed. Makino turned to Luffy and noticed his grin as he resumed resting his eyes. She just sighed, already predicting how her captain was eager to meet her. Before long, the pair of small boats was approaching an island dominated by the blue spires of the marine base. Nami docked her boat right next to Luffy's crew, and soon all 4 were strolling the streets, Luffy eagerly buying some food from the market with the pocket money they brought along. Nami shook her head, turning to Makino. Didn't we just eat lunch an hour ago? And he ate more than the rest of us. Oh, he just has an appetite. He burns through it all with his training. I guess that makes sense. She waltzed up next to Luffy, surprised to see him actually buying food instead of looting. So, Luffy, what's exactly your plan here? I want to check out that pirate hunter. What's her name again? That's a terrible idea. Kobe insisted Kuina never failed to turn in a bounty, and the only reason she kept them alive was so the government didn't cut their price. Thank goodness Captain Morgan caught her. The people around the fort suddenly yelped in the air, terrified out of their minds. Kobe looked completely lost while the others quickly got suspicious. Luffy trudged up past the houses until they came across a wrought iron gate, the symbol of the Marines emblazoned on the bars. The rest of the yard was hidden by a brick wall 10 feet high. While Kobe looked at the base in glee, Makino noticed that Nami was scratching her chin. Got an idea? Yeah, I've heard about that Captain Morgan. He's supposed to be one of the strongest Marines around here. And that means he's bound to have some treasure, right? Makino got a chuckle as Nami whipped around. You know, Luffy might be willing to help you. Why? Because he already considers you a friend. Isn't that right, Luffy? Both girls looked around, but the buccaneer was gone. They spotted him leaping on top of the wall to the yard, Kobe yelling that he needed to get down. Luffy didn't hear him, too busy observing the woman tied to the post. Standing only a few inches shorter than him, the pirate huntress Kuina was the image of fearsome even with her arms bound to the bar of a cross and her ankles tied to a wooden stake. Her plain black tee and blue jeans belied a well-toned physique. Her dark blue hair was tied into a ponytail to stay out of her way while fighting. A dark green band was wrapped around her left arm. But most telling was her glare, unflinching even as sweat dripped down her brow. Who the heck are you supposed to be? She demanded. There's no visiting hours, so beat it. You're a bounty hunter, huh? Why do you care? Scram before somebody shoots you. Luffy, are you insane? What if the Marines see you, or worse? Kuina will escape and go after you. Kobe warned, having shuffled up beneath him. Makino and Nami then climbed on either side, curious at what all the fuss was about. Kuina bared her teeth, infuriated. This isn't some kind of show. All of you better beat it right now or else you'll be sorry. She seems charming. Nami rolled her eyes only for Makino to lift herself up a little more. Hello there. Sorry to intrude, but we've heard great things about you. Take your shit and sell it somewhere else, lady. I'm not buying it. Right before Kobe could warn them all yet again, the four bystanders watched as a ladder was leaned up against the wall. A young brunette girl, no older than 7, climbed up with something hidden under one arm. She even shushed them all as she hopped into the yard. Luffy, you have to save her. Why? Kuina isn't gonna hurt her. Kobe wanted to call him insane only to watch as the little girl offered Kuina some homemade onigiri. Even as Kuina yells at her to leave, the youngling is insistent on thanking her for something. Makino and Nami were starting to wonder if she got arrested for something minor, like disturbing the peace when the answer strutted in. Flanked by 2 uniformed sailors was a blonde-haired man who was the epitome of smug. From his hideous violet leisure suit to the ear-to-ear smirk on his face under a blonde bowl cut to the strut that made it clear he owned the place, Luffy frowned the minute he saw him. He didn't need observation hockey to sense how pompous this guy is. Well, what do we have here? The new arrival sneered at the girl. Ooh, rice balls. Don't mind if I do. Kobe gawked in horror as this guy caustically ate the girl's food, then spat it out in disgust. Apparently this girl decided to make sweet onigiri. Wow, what a Makino muttered. But I don't get it. He's with the Marines. How could he act like this? Nami just looked at him in pity. Kid, you need to stop seeing things in black and white. Luffy's glare worsened as this guy ordered one of the Marines to chuck her over the wall. He could at least sense the seaman hesitate, but he still threw the brunette out like a sack of trash. Luffy leapt backwards to keep her safe. You alright? He asked her. Why yes, thank you. Kobe, come on. I want to make sure this girl gets home. Nami turned in surprise and watched as Luffy put the girl back on her feet and escorted her back to town, with the former cabin boy following behind. She actually felt the littlest bit impressed. The pirate who looks after little kids now, I've seen it all. Hey, jackass. Nami whipped around to see Makino practically blowing smoke, pulling herself up on the wall to glare down at the blonde bastard. What the hell is the matter with you? You don't treat children that way. The man laughed, finding her outburst hilarious. Sorry you had to see that, honey, it's just official business. The sign clearly says that anyone abetting criminals will receive the same treatment. I actually did her a favor. Why you little Makino was about to march over and blast his face off when Nami grabbed her ankle. What? Don't do anything rash. We can use this. The redhead then pulled herself up, dusting off her skirt before posing with her arms behind her waist. I'm really sorry about my friend, mister. We just got here and wanted to see the base up close. Oh please, Kuina rolled her eyes, but the big shot fell for the line. Then you've come to the right place. I'm Helmeppo, son of the great Captain Morgan. Nami had to resist laughing. Really, then would you mind showing the two of us around? Helmeppo ordered his escorts to open the front gate for them, Makino just shooting the thief a look. Really? Just trust me. Nami smiled back, being helped down and then led inside with a much more reluctant pirate behind her. Back in town, Luffy and Kobe found out the girl was named Rika and the daughter of a local restaurateur. And poor Kobe was holding his head in his hands at being told that the callous jackass who abused a child was the son of the captain who ran the base. Luffy just leaned back against the eatery's outside wall. So, what did Kuina do? Nothing. She protected me from a wolf Helmeppo called his pet. So, he locked her up for a month before letting her go. That's why I wanted to bring her some food, because that jerk is starving her. I can't believe this. Why isn't the captain doing anything about it? Kobe Ed. Because Morgan is even worse. Anyone who stands up to him gets thrown in jail. Man, what a jerk, Luffy sighed before he noticed Helmeppo walking up the streets with his arms around Makino and Nami. Oh, you don't need to do this. Nami insisted, chuckling nervously, I'm sure the base has a nice mess hall we could have gone to. Nonsense. Lovely ladies like yourselves deserve only the best. And don't worry about money. When you're with me, everything here is free. Makino could only barely keep her face in a scowl, her hands clenched into fists as she shot glares at the marine officers leading them around. The only reason she was going along with this was because Helmeppo kept his hands to her shoulders. She was about to snap but her eyes were above where he kept looking. As the blonde strode into the eatery, Luffy felt his blood boil. Not just at seeing how uncomfortable both women were, but the sheer arrogance. He watched as Helmeppo sat them down in the middle of the dining room and ordered Rika's mom to feed them and pour her finest wine. Nami's smile was clearly strained, her eyes darting at the glares everyone was shooting at her. When she mentioned how hungry she was, she figured that would be her ticket into the base. Now here she was farther from the goods and stuck with a total prick while the whole town wanted her dead. Her only solace was seeing Makino half ready to vomit from this guy's sheer sleaze. They also didn't tolerate his schmoozing, nursing her full glass with a glare. So, what's going to happen to that woman you have tied up? Oh, her. Well, she's supposed to be let go in about a week, but it's so boring. No begging, no pleading, nothing. She's a total waste of time. So, you let her go early, right? No harm in that. Nami asked only for Helmeppo to laugh. Oh, I know. I'll have her executed. The look on her face. Ahahaha. Luffy was behind him in an instant thanks to Shave, his guards chucked into opposite sides of the dining room. Helmeppo could barely blink before he was flung out the front door like a bag of trash. The whole restaurant was dead silent in shock. Ah, thank goodness. Makino sighed in relief, I was wondering when you'd come to shut him up. I didn't even see him move. Nami gawked, what can't this guy do? What's the matter with you? Helmeppo screamed, you know who I am, right? My daddy's the captain. He'll kill you for even touching me. Oh yeah? Then go get him. Luffy just crossed his arms, waiting for the blonde brat to back up his threat. Seeing someone not instantly intimidated by him, Helmeppo turned tail and cried all the way up the street, much to the bafflement of the townspeople save for Rika. The little girl was seeing stars at the town bully finally getting served. Sir, the mother asked, I appreciate the help but. Don't worry about this, Captain. I'll take care of him. The bystanders muttered in disbelief at how calm this man was, much less when both of the women Helmeppo brought in walked alongside him. Makino held his hand, ready to assist her captain with his latest goal. She was a bit more confused as Nami went with them. Going to look for that treasure? Well, if you two happen to make enough of a racket, it means an opening for me. So that's what you're after? Luffy wondered. Yep. Any high-ranking marine is bound to have some contraband or recovered treasure lying around. All I need is to find this captain's office. You know, I could help you find it. Really? Yep, if you join my crew. Nami's brow furrowed, seriously weighing the idea. She had to admit this guy was a cut above other pirates in power and leaps and bounds ahead in personality. But being branded a criminal was no small matter. It was one thing to rob other pirates, but to actively fight the navy. I'll consider it, she said plainly, getting Luffy to burst into giggles. Nami rolled her eyes, but she had a slight smile of her own. Hey, what about Kobe? Makino wondered. Leave him. Probably shouldn't let Marines see him helping pirates. And so the trio headed back to the front gate of the base. Luffy instructed Nami to hold onto his back as he picked Makino up in a bridal carry and leapt over the wall, landing clean on the other side in front of a baffled Kuina. What are you guys doing back here? Get out, I only have to stay here another week before. You get executed tomorrow. Finished Luffy, shutting the bounty hunter up. Makino and Nami corroborated the story, leaving the brunette fuming and struggling against the ropes. That little grrr, when I get out of here, I'm gonna skewer him like the pig he is. Dead in line, Makino nodded. So, you ready to get out of here? Yeah, except that douchebag stole my sword when I got tied up here. We can get it for you, Luffy offered with a smile, if you join my crew. You like I'd ever want to be a pirate. You better hope I don't cut you down too. Nami nodded along but raised her hands in placation. Look, I'm not that keen on the idea either, but you could do a lot worse than this guy. He's actually pretty decent for a pirate, anyway. Kuina desperately wanted to chase them off, but having her arms bound to a cross limited her options. If you can get my sword back, I'll maybe work with you. Sure thing. It's in the base, right? Makino, untie her. They nodded as Luffy grabbed Nami's arm before running ahead. Come on. Let's find that loot too. Wait, we're going in through the front door. Yeah, but don't worry. Most of the sailors are on the roof for some reason. How do you know that? Nami felt alarm bells ringing in her head as she was pulled inside. She expected to be bombarded instantly, but it looks like Luffy was right. The halls were practically deserted. It took going up several levels to encounter any resistance at all. And when they did, it was two grunts so surprised by Luffy that they barely got to draw their guns. Tempest kick. Before Nami's jaw dropped again as she witnessed one of the 6 powers, Luffy's leg caused a shockwave of air so powerful it bowled the guards over and left gouges in the stone walls. What just how did what are? Luffy didn't bother answering, bounding down the hallway with Nami desperately pushing to keep up. And as she kept following, this grinning doofus of a baddest just kept stupefying her. Every single soldier that was unlucky enough to cross his path was defeated in a matter of seconds. Some of the most memorable of these to her were on floor 6 when 4 grunts tried mounted assaults with their bayonets. Iron body. Nami slapped herself to make sure she wasn't imagining things as the blades just bounced off Luffy's and she conked them out in short order. Then came floor 8 where a particularly brave guard tried firing at the pirate with his pistol. Paper arts. While Nami ducked, she was baffled again. Luffy seemed to bend like the rubber his limbs were made of and the shots all missed. Once the guard was out of ammo, still clicking the trigger in terror, Luffy punched him to the floor and led onwards. And last was floor 11 where it seemed someone finally knew there were intruders in the base. 5 guards rushed from behind, screaming for them to cease and desist. Nami, get down. She did just that, throwing herself to the floor as Luffy leapt over her and straight at the line of soldiers. He landed a punch to the first guard hard enough to send him flying into all of his buddies and knocking them down like dominoes. How can you hit so hard? Armament hockey. I'll explain later, come on. 1 floor later and now beyond, impressed Nami was standing with her new escort in front of a white door with Helmeppo's name plastered on it. Luffy kicked it down like it was paper, leaving the blonde bastard himself scrambling in panic. SS stop right now. He cried, a gun held in his trembling hands. I'll kill you both. I don't need my DD daddy for this. Luffy's answer was to rush up and punch the jerk square in his cleft, sending him crashing into his armor. The pirate then grinned at the katana leaned up against the wall, Nami admiring how the white leather sheath was of amazing quality. She was no sword fighter, but even she could tell it was a fine blade. From there the duo made their way up one more level and burst down the double doors to Morgan's office. One look around the room and Nami could see this was over-decorated even by captain standards. If I were safe, where would I be? She immediately moved to a large portrait on the farthest wall, showing an imposing man with a metal-covered lower jaw and a massive axe blade for a right hand. She casually ripped the painting down and was rewarded with a massive metal door with a tumbler now sitting before her. Jackpot. Right as she was about to start cracking the code, a high-pitched bell rang out. Luffy could sense the dozens of soldiers that were preoccupied above them were rushing out as a group. He wondered what could have tipped them off. A look out the dozen-foot-long window facing the courtyard answered his question. Someone spotted Makino trying to free Kuina. Nami, we need to go. In a minute. I need to hear the tumblers and I can't with that alarm going. Time was of the essence. Luffy rushed over, easily prying his hand into the metal, and simply ripped the door open. Massive stacks of several pieces of golden jewelry and an aged piece of parchment rested inside, now free for the taking. Quick, grab something. Astonished once again, Nami quickly sobered up and reached for the sea chart, along with as much cash as she could get her hands on, and stuffing it all in the burlap sack she kept balled up under her shirt. She was snapped out of it by Luffy picking up the colossal wooden desk and flinging the entire thing out the window, shattering it. What are you doing? Making a path back outside. Grab on, we're gonna save those two. He then planted his hands on the bottom of the window frame and then stretched himself back. Nami hopped onto his back, holding onto her loot with all she could as her arms were wrapped around Luffy's torso. Gum rocket. He flew out of the base like a slingshot, Nami screaming in panic all the while as she noticed that the other ladies were facing a firing squad. We're gonna die. No way. I'll never let someone hurt my crew. Luffy landed smack in the middle between Makino and the Marines, just as the latter opened fire. Nami, again, chucked herself to the ground and said a small prayer for the first decent pirate she'd ever met. And once again, she was forced to check whether or not she was dreaming as the bullets bounced off of him. What the fuck? Kuina yelled, clearly blowing herself away, how the hell are you still alive? I'm a rubber man. Luffy said cheerfully, and here's your sword back. He tossed her the katana. The moment her hand wrapped around the handle, Kuina's entire demeanor changed. A smirk broke out over her face as she drew the sword in an instant and noticed the Marines edging away. They knew fully well they were dealing with one of the most notorious bounty hunters in the East Blue. There was one man who was not impressed, however. Standing over 9 feet tall and glowering at the whole crew of intruders was the infamous Captain Morgan himself. So one of you has eaten a devil fruit. Yep. Luffy cheered, bullets don't hurt me. The captain was less than impressed, raising his famous axe hand at the group. So, as of now, you are all guilty of jailbreaking, assaulting Marine officers, vandalizing my office, stealing tax money collected from the citizens. Nami tried to hide the sack of loot behind her before frowning. Wait, since when do the Marines collect taxes? And worst of all, defying my authority. You are all hereby sentenced to be executed immediately. Men, kill them. Seeing as how guns wouldn't work, they all drew their cutlasses and charged in. The closest of these, however, was soon caught in a blade lock with Kuina. Now, let me tell you what's actually going to happen, she said, grinning as the seaman tried in vain to overpower. The 4 of us are gonna walk out of here with all of your money, after I skewered that blonde little bitch who thought it was a good idea to grope my while I couldn't fight back. But, I might be willing to let that slide if you all let us go quietly. 3 more Marines tried rushing up from the side. In a literal flash of steel, she slashed them all down and then kept the lieutenant in place. You know, you just attacked several Marines, Luffy pointed out. What happened to not being a criminal? TCH, that's not important. Now that I'm free, I'll pursue my dream no matter what. I will be the world's greatest swordsman. Luffy's eyes twinkled, even as several Marines rushed at him. Thankfully, Makino stepped in with both her hands outstretched and let loose the biggest blast she could muster, to the utter horror of the soldiers and the amazement of Kuina. You've got one heck of a crewmate there. Yeah. You want to be one too. As several more men tried and failed to cut her down, Kuina weighed her options. On the one hand, she'd have a bounty, and that would mean having to deal with not only more Marines, but other hunters looking to cash in. On the other hand, it would mean some backup, and she couldn't deny that these 2 were fighters on her level. Fine. But I should warn you that if you ever get in the way of my dream, I won't hesitate to end you. Luffy just laughed at the threat. Awesome. The king of the pirates needs the world's greatest swordsman. And with that, Nami watched as the now 3-person pirate crew manhandled Morgan's entire force. Between Luffy's rubbery punches, Makino's blasts and Kuina's mastery of the sword, over 50 men were lying on the ground in a few minutes. The only exception was Morgan himself, fuming in anger. You bunch of useless maggots. But, sir. 2 of them have devil fruits. We can't. Quite. Everyone here is officially ordered to fire on themselves. What? Makino yelled, completely disgusted. Are you insane? You can't order your men to commit suicide. I am Marine Captain Axehand Morgan. I have earned that title through my superior strength. You will all respect my authority or I will. His boast was cut off by Luffy storming up and socking him in the face, knocking the iron-jawed captain backwards with a single hit without any armament hockey. You talk too much. The captain reared up, snorting mad as he raised his axe with a scream. D. His swing split the ground, a chasm opening beneath his feet and a dozen feet away. Too bad, Luffy easily sidestepped and stretched his leg back. Gum whip. The rubbery limb smacked Morgan in the knees, breaking his stance. Luffy then rushed up to sock Morgan again, only to meet the flat of an axe instead. Morgan flung his arm out to force Luffy away, but the pirate gave him a spinning kick to the face that knocked the captain on his knees. The other Marines couldn't believe it. The captain was losing. Let's stop right there. Everyone turned to see Helmeppo, once again ignoring that no one wanted him around. That was especially true for Nami, thanks to the gun held to her head. Why you leave my daddy alone? Or I'll shoot this girl right where she stands. Yeah, no. Helmeppo turned around just in time to see Makino blast his leg with a burst of her power, sending the cowardly bully tumbling to the ground in agony. Makino then snatched up the gun and threw it as far away as possible, flashing Luffy a thumbs up. He turned to give her the same, as Morgan rose up behind him. You criminal scum. I'll personally behead each and every one of you. Is that so? Kuina widened her stance, her sword in its sheath once again. Wanna test that, metal on metal. He roared like a bull and charged right at her, ignoring Luffy completely, but the bounty hunter didn't flinch. She kept one hand on her sheath and the other on the handle, her gaze as sharp as her weapon, as Morgan raised his famous axe for a killing blow. One sword style. Morgan's blade came down in a flash, ready to cleave her in half. Blind song. Except Kuina was now behind him, faster than he could blink. He heard the click of her sword re-entering its holster before a sickening sound consumed his ears. He looked down and saw his entire right arm, including his famous axe hand, fall to the ground. The entire base was horrified to see the great Captain Morgan fall to his knees, screaming in bloody murder as his stump of an arm gushed red. "Heh, pathetic," Kuina boasted, "guess you're one-hand Morgan now." "That was awesome." Luffy cheered, stars in his eyes. "Daddy, no." "Oh, shut up already." Elmepo was silenced by a smack to the face courtesy of Nami, clutching her hidden box staff with white knuckles. "That's for staring at me all day, you creep." She beamed him again, mangling his face and leaving him a broken, gibbering heap on the ground. "You bitch." Morgan slowly stood up, clutching his leaking limb with his only remaining hand. "You think this will stop me? I'll hunt you all down like the dogs you are." "Leave her alone." Morgan turned to see Luffy glaring at him. "No one threatens my friends." "Friends? Pirates don't have friends." "How would you know? You're not a pirate." Luffy stretched both his arms back, even as Morgan tried to clobber him with his fist. "You worthless Gum. Gum." His arms rocketed forward and wrapped around Morgan's waist, making the captain stop and pause. "Metronome." Luffy flung himself backwards into a suplex, sending his elongated arms lying like catapults with Morgan as the projectile. The captain screamed in terror as he was rushing directly for the roof of the base. And, even worse, the just installed stone statue of himself he was having men put up today. Morgan collided with his own vanity project head-on, cracking the stone with his own skull, before getting whipped back the other way. The people of Shell's Town just suddenly saw the feared captain crash outside of the base like a ragdoll before getting flung back into the air. Over and over again, the captain was slammed into the ground until Luffy's arms finally ran out of space and snapped back. The now comatose captain was now covered in bruises, his metal jaw cracked, and blood still seeped from his lost arm. The only sign he was still alive was the quiet groan he let out, in more pain than he could ever remember feeling. And such a commotion meant that the people of Shell's Town, including Kobe and Rika, rushed to the gate to see the unbeatable captain laying in a broken heap amongst his own troops. "Holy shit," Kuina muttered. The whole yard was completely silent, nobody daring to move. That is until all of the sailors stood up, picked up their guns and tossed them into the air. "We're free." They all hollered, dancing and jumping for joy. "I can finally sleep at night again." "Serves you right, you tin pot tyrant." "Quick, somebody call HQ. He won't even be allowed as a cabin boy. And throw that Helmeppo in jail too. That jackass made me throw a little girl over the wall." Luffy and the three girls watched in amazement as the Marines completely ignored them, then got another surprise as the townspeople busted down the gates and crowded around them. Luffy laughed in delight as the townspeople gathered him on their shoulders and led him through town, singing his praises while a smiling Makino, a calm Kuina and a flabbergasted Nami all followed the crowd. Several hours later, Luffy was patting his stomach behind a stack of plates as three ladies sat around the same table. "Man, which one of us went 3 weeks without food?" Kuina kidded, although that was freaking delicious. "Thank you so much," Makino said to Rika's mother. "Oh, it's no trouble. You're the town heroes. Consider all of this covered." Nami let out a breath of relief, patting her sack of treasure with a grin. "I've gotta say, Luffy. You really are a cut above other pirates, and not just in strength. You're actually a pretty decent guy." "Aw, thanks. And you're really handy with that bow staff. How often do you train?" "Oh, what, that? PSH, it's nothing. I just needed something that was easier to hide than a sword and didn't cost ammo. I'm no fighter." "You shouldn't sell yourself short," Makino told her, "with a little bit of training from Luffy, you could probably handle yourself in a fight. But I can't do any of the insane things he does. I don't have a devil fruit or freaky martial arts powers. Not yet. I can teach you those techniques." Nami gaped at him once again, now with a hint of blushing on her cheeks. "Really? You'd give away info like that?" "Of course. I want to have the strongest crew on the seas, so I need to bring everybody up as much as possible." "Now you're speaking my language." Kuina cheered, downing her beer in one gulp. "I hope you're ready to teach because I'm gonna learn all your tricks." After a bit more food and merriment, in walked a small crowd of Marines led by a tall tan man in a blue marine cap. "Excuse me, did you happen to say you were pirates earlier?" "Yep." Luffy nodded, "with Nami and Kuina, that makes it 4. "Don't count me, damn it. We're business partners, that's it." "I see. Regardless of that, I'm afraid I must ask you to leave." "What?" yelled the crowd who were watching the meet. The lead sailor ignored them. While I am just as grateful for Morgan being deposed as anyone else, as a Marine I cannot sit idly by as pirates are within our town. As thanks, we will not report you to headquarters, but you must leave immediately. Luffy could sense the growing unease, up until the people started shouting at the lieutenant for daring to treat their saviors this way. He didn't see any issue with getting up and leaving until he noticed Makino scowling. You okay? Luffy, I had to deal with that purple-suited prick for almost half an hour, while he treated me like a trophy. I'm setting this straight now. He rolled his shoulders, admitting he couldn't stand watching her being carted around either, so he allowed it. The bartender turned buccaneer stood up, slammed her hands on the table to command the room's attention. So, let me get this straight, she asked, her words clipped, we saved the entire town, including you, from being under that lunatic's thumb. And our reward is getting chazzed out like common criminals. The lieutenant stepped back before leveling a glare at her. It is a Marine's duty to carry out justice, and pirates are the enemy of that. Enemies, we're the reason you all don't have that bastard treating this town like his own kingdom, where's the justice in that? Luffy chuckled as the crowd quickly turned to their side, shooting daggers at the lieutenant. He could hear them all muttering about how right Makino was, they didn't deserve to be treated like this. He glanced at Nami, trying to not burst into laughter at how effortlessly Makino had won them all over. Then he saw Kuina, taking a refill from Rika's mom with a carefree smile. The Marine stuttered, it's nothing personal, protocol just says. Protocol, huh? Where is it in protocol that a captain gets to have carte blanche over an entire town? Where's the protocol that lets a captain order his own men to fire on themselves? Where's the protocol for letting the son of the captain, a fucking civilian at that, have a woman executed for kicks? He did Wyatt. The crowd roared, having clearly not heard about Helmeppo's wager or his sudden change. The lieutenant darted over to Kuina, kicking back. She glared back at him before the most vulpine grin imaginable crossed her face. Oh yeah, he was going to do that. Not to mention he starved me and offered to let me go early if I entertained him in his room. Now people were pouring into the restaurant, demanding the lieutenant's head. His cronies were of no help, getting yelled at on all sides by pissed-off passers-by. The lead Marine looked around, desperate for something to resolve this, and spotted Nami's sack. Fine, they can stay. But that woman there needs to return the stolen money. That's government property from our treasury. Nami gained a shrewd look of her own. Oh, this isn't from the treasury, it was from a huge safe in Morgan's office. I figured these were the taxes he was collecting. Bullshit. Someone in the crowd yelled, that guy was charging us just to live. Yeah, he said it was to fund his greatness, and anyone who didn't pay got thrown in jail. I say let her have it. I'm 10 times happier letting her get rich than that psycho Morgan. Now all of the lawmen were sweating bullets. They were officially out of options, the townspeople hated Morgan and loved these pirates for saving them. But every bone in their well-trained bodies was telling they couldn't just let swashbucklers do as they pleased. There had to be some way to resolve this before the town went to hell in a handbasket. Then the lieutenant spotted Rika, the little girl sobbing on a bar stool near her mother. His heart breaking at the sight, he went over and leaned down. What's the matter, young lady? I'm so sorry, Mr. Marine, It's okay, Rika. Tell us what's bothering you. The crowd started to calm down, worried that they might have upset the girl. Well, it's just that pirate over there, she pointed to Luffy, he saved me from when Helmeppo made somebody throw me over the wall. Her finger then moved to Kuina, raising an eyebrow. And as she saved me from the big nasty wolf Helmeppo be brought in here. Rika put on the saddest possible look imaginable, making the entire crowd gasp at her torment. Please let them go, I wouldn't be alive without them, she then sobbed into her hands, making her mother rush up to comfort her. How dare you? She's absolutely right, my daughter would be dead twice over without these nice folks. Shame on you for trying to run them out of town. At Torrid, the crowd was ready to stampede and even mob the base. The lieutenant held up his hands and bowed before the Straw Hats, all of whom were smiling at him. Silly me. What I meant to say was thank you very much for assisting our town. Feel free to rest and relax here until tomorrow. The people of Shell's town cheered, their anger gone as they scattered to enjoy the first relaxing day they've had in years. The lieutenant left in a hurry as the Straw Hats noticed that Rika looked perfectly fine. You looking to be an actress, kid? Nami asked, thoroughly impressed. I just didn't want you guys getting punished for helping us. Hey, it works for me. Luffy laughed, holding up his empty stack of plates. More meat, please. The girls all laughed, happy that they had a moment to relax for a change. That night, Kuina simply enjoyed having her freedom back as she hopped from bar to bar. All the while, she kept her precious blade glued to her hip to make sure it would never be taken from her. Nami was all cozy in a hotel suite, happily counting up the money she pulled from Morgan's safe. She chuckled as she pulled out a massive diamond necklace, easily 5 carats worth. I've got to hand it to you, Luffy, you really know how to make a girl happy. With this and Alvida, I've made a killing already. But Luffy didn't notice. He and Makino were too busy in the penthouse of the nicest hotel in town, enjoying the fact that they had a proper bed to lay on for the first time since leaving Fuchsia Village. Makino, you're so beautiful, fuck, I'm gonna do it, Luffy. Fill me up this time. And after a wonderful night of passion, it did raise an issue for Makino. She was a thoroughly sated mess, but she could tell Luffy was still raring to go as she was getting under her side of the covers. Either I need to toughen up a lot, or I'm going to need some help. Luffy had another issue. He concentrated for a moment, returning to Nika's realm. Sorry Casanova, but you're not up my alley if you know what I mean. No, I don't. Luffy blinked before shaking his head, so, Garp told me where babies came from. And considering what you just did, you're worried about Makino getting pregnant. Yeah. I don't think I'm ready to be a dad yet. Well, then it's a good thing you have some amazing willpower. You don't want to get a girl priggers, right? Yeah. Then you won't. It's that simple. Luffy, for once, looked skeptical. I'm pretty sure it doesn't work like that. And most people don't have gods living in their head and hundreds of people reading their exploits. Look, it's a really long story. But the gist of this. As long as you don't want to have kids until after you turn Imu into paste, then you won't. Keep it simple, stupid. Right. The pirate just shrugged, figuring that was good enough an answer for him. He soon returned to reality and Ed Mack and goodnight, thankful for having such a woman in his life. However, the fun had to come to an end for the newly formed Straw Hat Pirates. The lieutenant gave them until tomorrow morning, so, at the crack of dawn, Luffy awoke and began gathering his new crewmates. They arrived at the dock to find a small fishing boat had been donated to them, fully stocked with provisions and some extra clothes for the ladies. They also found a plate of rice balls with a note from Rika, thanking Kuina once again and assuring these were made with salt instead of sugar. Oh, isn't that sweet? Makino awed, you've got a fan, Kuina. The swordswoman just rolled her eyes, but helped herself to the dumplings anyway, muttering about how hungry she still was. Luffy did spot the smile on her face as she enjoyed them, before turning to untie their new boat. The only exception was Nami, who stuck with the dinghy she got from Alvida, which she loaded with her bags of loot. Iridee then caught Luffy staring at her. What? You can join us if you want. I keep telling you, I'm not a pirate. This is all temporary, okay? Luffy just chuckled, figuring she would come around sooner or later. He tossed Nami some rope to hook their boats together, and soon the group cast off from Shell's town. But then Luffy heard someone rushing up towards them. Kobe. Hey, you guys. The girls all gaped as Kobe was now dressed in a white shirt, blue slacks tucked into boots with a lighter blue scarf around his neck. Kobe. You joined the Marines. Makino cheered. Yeah. I followed that lieutenant back to the base and asked him to join, and how I want to stop pirates and corrupt jerks like Morgan. And I couldn't have made it without you all. See you later. Luffy waved goodbye, only to stare as the entire Marine force assembled behind a saluting Kobe. The entire line of sailors copied the salute. Pirates getting sent off by Marines now. I've seen everything. Kuina appreciated in between her onigiri. Nami shook her head, wondering how so many impossible things were happening. But maybe he could make one more happen. Back on the dock, Kobe turned to his new co. Sir, does this mean we have to go a week without food now? Negative, chore boy. Those aren't pirates here. As far as I'm concerned, those are heroes. One of the major upsides of having a larger boat, for Luffy at least, was finally having some legroom to do a little bit of proper training. Even if it was just punches and kicks, it was still progress in his eyes. He was happy to see he wasn't the only one as Makino, and copying his movements while Kuina was practicing sword swings, her blade blurring through the air each time. The only exception was Nami, rifling through her bag for something. I know I grabbed that chart, aha. She pulled out the age parchment and looked eager for a moment before dread overcame her. Oh no. What's the matter? Look at this. She held the chart out to Luffy. Immediately he noticed the grinning Jolly Roger with a giant red nose on the skeleton's face. Hahaha. Your flashy map of the Grand Line is now mine. He read, who's Buggy the Clown? A pretty notorious pirate in the East Blue, Kuina answered, wanted for 15 million, he's one of the heavy hitters. I'd even think twice going after him on my own. But if he has a chart of the Grand Line, we could really use it, Makino thought. Nami, do you have any experience with it? Nope, and I know how dangerous that place is. That's the last place you'd want to sail blind. We need to get that chart for ourselves. And that does sound useful. What happened to not stealing unless you're stealing your things back? Nami asked. He just chuckled. Heh, I thought you only stole from pirates. You grab the chart, we can take care of this buggy. Wait, really, you'd do that for me? Of course. I never abandon a member of my crew. Nami was about to blurt out how, once again, she never agreed to that, but she finally wrestled it around in her head. Would it be such a bad thing? And besides Luffy, Makino and Kuina seemed decent enough people, even if the latter could chug ale like it was water. What kind of person, I mean, does that? Makino snuggled up to her captain with a proud smile. This one does. Oh, stop. The two shared a quick chat before going back to training. Nami was also surprised to see this sort of behavior. Nami was not stupid, she could clearly notice that they weren't picking up any men so far, although it had been less than a week. Luffy might have clearly had a thing for ladies, but she could also tell he genuinely cared. As far as she could tell, they kept any hanky-panky after nightfall. Nami, thanks to always keeping her ear to the ground, remembered that Buggy was last seen in the quiet orange town a few days away at their current pace. With a bit of changing the sails, the foursome was on their way with a fair amount of time to pass. While much of it was spent training and the occasional bit of fun, there was also some time to get to know each other. Nami was quite shocked to hear that Luffy and Makino came from Dawn Island, a notoriously dangerous spot with little to see aside from dangerous forests and the junkyard that was Grey Terminal. She noticed Luffy's brow darken at mentioning that place, explaining how he and his brothers got into a serious scrape there and that one didn't make it out. Oh, I'm sorry to hear that. It's okay. He's part of the reason I'm doing this. I thought it was that pirate Shanks, the one who gave you the hat. Kuina asked. Well, he's why I want One Piece. But there's something after. Nami balked at that, supremely lost. Wait, isn't the whole point of being king of the pirates is proving you're the best? What could come after that? Luffy glanced over to Makino. She just shrugged, it was his call. Nami? Are you a member of my crew? I told you. She hesitated, nowhere near as forceful as before. Kuina scoffed as she leaned back against the port railing. Okay, could you chill with the hate on you have for pirates already? It's pretty obvious we don't cause carnage for the hell of it. I dunno what one ever did to you, but that isn't us. Nami's hand drifted to her shoulder, taking a long deep breath before looking Luffy in the eye. Yes. I am. Then you have to swear you don't repeat a word of this to anyone besides the three of us. That got Kuina to sit up as Nami nodded. And so Luffy let them in on his role as the avatar of Nika and how Makino was gifted a devil fruit power. The swordswoman was blown away, astonished at the seriousness Luffy suddenly had. Nami had a very different reaction. Oh my god. Ahahaha. You almost had me there, Luffy. She guffawed, wiping tears out of her eye. I mean, really gods, ancient prophecies, giving someone a superpower. I can't feel my ribs. I haven't laughed this hard in years. She carried on like this for several minutes, the waves bobbing and the others all staring at her. It was only after a seagull flew low over their boats that Nami realized she was the only one laughing. Oh, you're totally serious. Yep. You actually meant that. All of it. 100%. Another very close call with a bird happened as Nami processed all of this. She then glanced over to Kuina. You actually bought that. Why not? Because it's totally crazy, that's why. Makino whined, covering them both as Nami went utterly ballistic for several minutes more. She called Luffy a deranged madman, insisted that this was all an elaborate joke, swore she wasn't on his crew over a dozen times, and even threatened to drown the rubber brain. And through it all, Luffy just calmly refuted everything thrown at him with a series of no, yes, it is, and that's not very nice. After what felt like a battle of its own, Nami ran out of steam and realized that this was no dream. Luffy actually was tied to some chaotic deity who wanted him to revolutionize the world. For the first time, she actually thought her job sounded easy. So, convinced yet? Kuina wondered, some of us would like to get back to training. You're actually set on this? Nami asked him in total disbelief. Totally. What's the point of having a dream otherwise? The thieving girl felt her breath hitch. A flash of a smiling face with maroon hair hit her, making her want to curl in on herself and cry. The others all noticed. Makino got up to comfort her, but Nami raised her hand. I'll be fine. Are you sure? Yeah, we should just focus on getting to Buggy. Except there's one other thing I'm wondering, Luffy declared, moving over to Kuina. What's up with that? She glanced down at the green band around her arm. Now it was Kuina's turn to tense up before sighing. I guess this was bound to come up sooner or later. The brunette sat up straight, her sword resting on her lap as she reached to untie the sash. The others could all see her gently handling the fabric, despite its basic appearance. Nami would have thought it was just an accessory. This is a piece of the guy worn by a boy I once knew. His name was Rorano's Oro, and he wanted to be the world's greatest swordsman. Kuina then spun a short story about how a tenacious lad with green hair and a big mouth strode into her father's dojo, swearing he would defeat every person. Despite his bluster, he made good on his word and defeated every boy under her father's tutelage. That was when Kuina met him and defeated him in a matter of seconds. The prodigy with the blade since she could walk, Kuina even at that age was used to easily beating anyone who crossed her. Only her father was a match, and by then the skill gap was small. But unlike so many others, Zoro refused to budge. He swore to break her winning streak one day, challenging her time and again, and yet there was no change. Oh, Zoro did get better. He learned to wield a sword in each hand with brutal efficiency, able to tackle the entire rest of the dojo in a minute. But not Kuina. 2,000 times we fought, and 2,000 times I won. Wow, this guy was serious, Makino awed. Where'd all that determination come from? His father was killed by pirates threatening his village while his mother got sick. Although, I only knew that years after the fact. At the time, all I cared about was being the best myself. The hand tightened around her katana as she recalled how her father used to discourage her, subtly insisting that the title was world's greatest swordsman for a reason. It drove Kuina to train even harder, even as she loathed her own body once puberty started. Then came that one night. Zoro insisted on challenging me with real swords. I brought Wado Ichimonji. He found 2 of the lesser katanas we kept. And to be fair, it was our longest duel. It went on for several minutes and I won again. Zoro went berserk at how he lost yet again, but I told him it was only a matter of time before he beat me. Bull. Kuina looked up to see Luffy shaking his head. Gender doesn't mean a damn when it comes to a fight. She chuckled. Heh, he said the same thing. Got even angrier, saying he wanted to win because he was legitimately better and not because he had a dot. So, that night, we promised each other that one of us would become the world's greatest. Nami could feel a bit coming a long way into this story. So, where is this Zoro now? Kuina's head lowered and gripped the sash again. Zoro liked to train away from the dojo, using some boulders. One day, we noticed he hadn't come back for several days. So, me and a few other kids went to find him. She presented the guy scrap. And this was all that was there, snagged on a low branch in the river. Everyone else closed their eyes, Makino especially trying to hold back tears. The thought of some child drowning miles away from where anybody could save them. I was the one who told my father what happened. And when I did. The 12-year-old Kuina sobbed as her forehead laid against the mat, prostrated in front of her father Shimotsuki Kaoshiro. In between them was the sheathed Wado Ichimonji. Kuina, the master, asked, "You mustn't blame yourself for this." Zoro was a fierce spirit, insisting that no one else accompany him. "That doesn't make me feel better," she cried. "He never went to train in the river before. And right after we duel, he suddenly does. Why did you take the Wado Ichimonji? You could have hurt yourself." Her head whipped up, glaring daggers at her father. "What, I might have fallen down the stairs. Don't give me that shit. You'd never talk this way to any of your other students." "Kuina, that is no way for a lady to talk. I'm not a lady. I'm a swordsman. And I swear to you that I'm going to be the greatest in the world. So great that even Zoro will know it in heaven." That night, my father apologized for all the prodding. He said that my conviction was the strongest he'd ever seen and then passed down the Wado Ichimonji to me. I stayed for a few more years before heading out on my own to improve my skills. I got into bounty hunting to do that while making some money. Nami could scarcely believe it all, suddenly looking at this lackadaisical woman in a new light. She knew full well how hard it was to work on your own, much less to actually be a bounty hunter. Kuina just retired the fabric band back around her arm, then stood up like she was about to train some more. Luffy placed a hand on shoulder. "Kuina, I'm glad to have you on my crew. And I want to help you get to that dream. So, would you like a devil fruit power?" The brunette looked down at her blade, the weapon she'd wielded since she could walk. She practiced day in and day out to strengthen herself, so wasn't this cheating? To just be handed power without having done a thing to earn it. There's more to it than that. Kuina saw a determined look in Luffy's eye. "Having a devil fruit doesn't make you stronger. It's a tool, just like your sword. A lot of morons think just having a fruit makes you unbeatable, but it doesn't. You need to learn, just like how you train to aim a gun or swing a blade." "It's true," Makino added, "most of Luffy's power comes from his muscles and techniques. The only thing his fruit did was make him rubber." "Wait, so what about the kicks that make shockwaves or moving super fast?" Nami asked. "Just techniques. You'll both learn those too." After a long pause, Kuina stood up. "Okay. In that case, I'll take it. But when I face him, I won't use it unless I absolutely have to." "Great. Now hold still." Nami watched as Luffy placed his palm on Kuina's forehead, then slumped backwards. She was about to wonder when he snapped back to attention, his eyes glowing gold. The thief flinched backwards in shock as Luffy returned to normal, Kuina glancing at her own hands in surprise. The brunette then walked up to Makino. "Shoot me." "Huh? Why?" "Not a big burst, but enough to make it hurt." Figuring there was a point to this, Makino did as asked and gave a tiny shot to Kuina's lower leg. It was only a few pellets, barely enough to make her flinch, but it proved her point. Kuina channeled this new feeling welling in her gut and a faint red glow surrounded her. She drew her blade in a blur, then slashed a dozen times in the span of 3 seconds. Interesting, she mused, the wait fruit. The glow faded and Kuina suddenly felt her leg flare up. The others were all amazed. Kuina could now grant herself a power boost proportional to the damage she received at the cost of worsening her injuries. Makino bandaged up her injured leg while the brunette sat back for a nap. Soon enough, the foursome was inside of a small island. And as if the brightly colored caravel with a circus tent docked at the nearest town, they soon got total confirmation of Buggy's presence thanks to the small tugboat with an equally gaudy paint job and the red-nosed Jolly Roger emblazoned on its sail. And inside of it were 3 pirates, the most menacing of which brandished a cutlass right at them. Well, looks like we've got some trespassers. He threatened, all right, ladies and gentlemen, hand over all your treasure and no one gets hurt. Good idea. Luffy leapt over to the enemy boat in an instant, the lead pirate doing a double take. The laps of his black beanie sporting the Buggy Pirates logo flapped around just before the straw-hatted teen nailed him with an uppercut that sent him flying off into the sky. The other two, a darker more rotund man and a gangly man with floofy orange hair, promptly hopped into the blue and swam off. Hey Nami. Look what they had. He chuckled as he hauled a weathered wooden over his shoulder and hopped back to his own boat. No way. Nami was practically a child on Christmas as she picked the lock in record time and admired the glimmering treasure within. Gold bars, diamonds and stacks of cash were crammed inside. This is amazing. Thank you, Luffy. He just smiled at her happiness before keeping an eye out for any more surprises. As they sailed closer, Nami muttered how she was so much closer to her goal already, a fact which Luffy filed away for later. It didn't take much longer for the crew to set foot in Orange Town. The dockside was filled with shops on well-paved roads, and yet there wasn't a person in sight. No one hiding inside, either, Makino sensed with her observation, you don't think? Doubtful, Kuina scoffed, Buggy's more the kind to take everything that isn't nailed down. Odds are he's around here partying. So, what exactly is the plan here? Nami asked as they walked through the deserted town. We find the pirates, beat them up and grab the chart. Luffy said, what else would we do? You do know how many men Buggy has, right? You did watch us beat up an entire base, right? Nami glared at Kuina, unamused at the taller girl's smirk. They all stopped at the first sign of life in this ghost town, a small dog parked in front of a store that seemed to sell pet food. Somebody's pet. Makino approached the pooch, gasping as she saw the scuffs and cuts along its coat. Oh no, he's been hurt. He hasn't budged, Kuina noticed as they got closer still, must be really well trained. Hey, who are all of you? The pirates turned to find a man with white hair, armor strapped over a yellow plaid shirt and khakis, and a crude wooden spear strapped to his back. Despite his age, he didn't show an ounce of fear at all. Are you all with Buggy the Clown? Nope. We just sailed in, Nami answered. Who are you, and who's this dog? I'm Boodle, mayor of this town. This here is Chow Chow, he belonged to the man who owned this store. He's been guarding it ever since he passed on. Oh, that's horrible. Makino ed, and where did all these injuries come from? Did one of the pirates do this? Afraid so. That blasted ship just sailed right in and started bombarding us with cannon fire. We managed to evacuate before any serious damage was done, but it's humiliating. Being chased out of your town. Trust me, there are worse things, Nami grumbled, but anyway, we are looking for Buggy. Where is he? Listen, whoever you are, get out now. Buggy has a big price, but you can't cash it in if you're dead. Scram, before you end up in big trouble. Almost on cue, an earthquake struck the area. Soon one after another came, the mayor trembling in place as he hastily gripped his spear. The other pirates all watched as a truly massive lion, easily taller than any of them, strode up the street. And despite the light green fur and lavender mane, the beast's features were less noticeable than its rider. Sitting atop the giant cat was a man with white hairstyle to resemble bear ears, along with more white fuzz covering his and blue pants. Who are all of you? The furry man demanded. This town belongs to the Buggy Pirates. Leave now or you'll suffer my wrath. Should have figured, Kuina sighed, hand resting on her sword handle, Moji, beast tamer of the Buggy Pirates. And you are the feared pirate huntress, so you're here for the captain's head. How fitting. Richie here was just getting hungry. I was going to ransack that store the stupid dog was guarding, but fresh meat is even better. What was that? Luffy warned, stepping forward, you hurt this dog. DCH, that stupid mutt started barking at us as we crossed. I was planning on teaching him a lesson and feeding Richie at the same time. But since you're all here. The pirate leapt off, ordering his steed to tear them all apart. Boodle shivered in fear while the straw hat stood firm, Luffy glaring at Richie, even as it roared right in his face. The jungle cat raised a paw to smack the young man away, but it was easily caught. "What?" Boodle cried. Idiot," Kuina scoffed. "Impossible," Moji demanded, but the lion himself seemed baffled as well. Luffy then pointed using his other hand. "Finger gun. Yellow lotus." His hand blurred forward, poking a dozen different spots in a second. When Luffy let go of the offending paw, Richie collapsed on the street with blood oozing out of several newly made holes. "Richie, no. Holy shit," Nami gulped, "he could do that the whole time." "He doesn't use that on people if he can help it," Makino noted, "but animals. It's how he hunted cats just like that for years." "What kind of pirate is he?" Boodle gawked as Luffy walked up to the trembling Moji. Wait, I'm sorry. Please, I'll let you go, nobody will know you were here. You were going to destroy that shop, right? Even if it meant hurting that dog, right? And no, of course not. Liar. Luffy slammed his fist into the beast tamer's gut, sending him flying into a house like a human cannonball. The building shook for a moment before collapsing around the fallen pirate, Luffy just turning to face the astonished mayor. "I want to protect your home, but these guys are out of your league. Leave Buggy to us, okay old man?" "Why yeah you're right, I'll go tell the others to stay away while you work, thank you." Boodle ran off back to the camp the citizens made a few miles away, leaving only Chow Chow still diligently parked in front of the store. The four pirates moved on, Luffy using his observation to track down the rest of the crew. They quickly found lines of demolished houses and jaunty music coming from the roof of the local tavern, a big top set up on the roof. "Okay, what are they even celebrating?" Makino asked. "There's no marines around here, no other pirates. They just sailed right in. What's the accomplishment?" "That's just how most pirates are. Taking whatever they feel like, other people's lives be damned." Kuina and Makino shared a look. Nami actually specified most pirates. Looks like she was actually coming around. Pretty soon, the crew was glaring up at the rabble-rousing buccaneers. Many of the buggy pirates had face paint, brightly colored clothes, and were openly downing beers and food like their takeover was something worth partying over. Luffy took the deepest breath he could before letting out a deafening shout. "Buggy the Clown. Get your ass out here." "Who's the flashy idiot that just said that?" A man with blue hair, a blinding orange captain's coat over his shoulders, and a spherical red nose, strode out of the circus tent and glared down at the Straw Hats. "Well, answer me." "I did," Luffy jerked a thumb to himself, "we want the chart of the Grand Line." "Oh, I just love rookies. The gall they all have." Buggy's men all laughed at the obvious joke only to stop dead when the half-dead Moji was flung down. "This is your only warning," Kuina ordered, dusting her hands off, "either give us the chart and we leave, or fight us, and you all look like that." Seeing one of the right-hand men like this made most of the crew reconsider. Moji didn't have a 4 million bounty for nothing. The only exception was Buggy himself, his hands curling into fists. "So, this is how you've chosen to die. I'll give you credit for being upfront, but just who in the hell do you think you all are?" "I'm Monkey D. Luffy. And I'm gonna be king of the pirates." The clown cackled before turning to his stunned crew, a manic smile on his face. "Ready the cannon. These pirates are dying by one of the buggy balls." "Wait, a cannon?" Makino tilted her head. "That doesn't sound too bad, all things considered. How do you think the houses got like this?" Nami said, pointing back to the trashed streets. "I dunno what they're made of, but his cannonballs are something special." The well-polished cannon was pointed straight down the floor, Nami's knees buckling as the kill-happy pirates loaded a blood-red cannonball with Buggy's Jolly Roger printed on the front. The other three were impassive, wondering if this was seriously the best they could do. "Dear!" Buggy cried, someone eagerly lighting the match. Luffy stared dead ahead even as the cannon boomed like thunder, the red orb of death rushing right at his face. He channeled armament hockey into his leg before swinging up with an axe kick, the buggy balls clanging against his limb before launching into the sky. "Got another one?" he asked as the sky was rocked with a massive explosion, the town quaking, but not nearly as much as Buggy's entire crew. "No fucking way. That's impossible. How does he still have his leg? Quick, somebody find that chart. We need to get rid of these guys. Pan it, you bunch of imbeciles." Everyone stopped as Buggy snarled, the captain turning to address the upstart only to gasp. "Hey. Where did he go?" "Up here." Luffy called several stories above the tavern. And thanks to Moonwalk, he soared even higher much to the terror of the enemy crew. Even Buggy himself gawked at such casual defiance of gravity before the straw-hatted rogue revealed his real talent. He stretched both his legs high into the air. Gum spear. His feet came rocketing down toe first, cracking through the roof of the tavern and slicing through each of the floors like they were paper. The pirates then went from scared to full-blown panic as Luffy retracted his limbs and the entire building collapsed underneath them. Luffy then hopped out of the wreckage, debris on his shoulders and a smile on his face. So, are you all done yet? Nami watched in complete amazement at yet another casual demonstration of Luffy's power. She imagined that any building would have been annihilated by that attack like, say, a multi-story pagoda. Well, that was too easy, Kuina remarked, now all we gotta do is find the map in that wreckage. Over my dead body. The clown burst out of the ruined building, holding two groaning crew members over his head like living shields. Heedless of their pain, Buggy chucked them both aside and strode onto the street. About a dozen men followed after him, the rest all lied unconscious. You flashy bastards have officially pissed me off. You're not the only one. Nami looked over to Luffy, flinching at the heated glare he was sending towards Buggy. Huh. What did he do? He used his friends like meat shields. I'd never do something like that. Ever. Friends, what kind of cushy palace did you come from, boy? Pirates don't need friends. Buffy cackled, they need gold, jewels, treasure. That's all that matters in this world. Luffy growled in anger. I can't stand fake pirates like you. Give me the chart and I won't kick your ass. The tie-I-I-ik. Buggy's few remaining men charged forward, weapons drawn. Luffy looked to the side and nodded to Makino. You've got this. Yes, Captain. The ex-barmaid saluted as she ran to meet the oncoming horde. Of course, Buggy's men all laughed and jeered at some broad trying to fight them all off. Until Makino tried out a new trick. HK heel. She threw a forward kick right at the nearest pirate, a burst of force shooting out of her foot as he was launched backwards. She did stumble as she landed, circling her arms in panic before righting herself. Two eager buccaneers tried to take advantage and cut her up with swords. She tapped into her observation hockey, jumping between their slices and running ahead to uppercut a man in the chin. They had to admit, these guys were well above Haguma's bandits. They hit harder, they came at her more than one at a time, and they were ruthless. She even had to duck behind one man as a meat shield to avoid several bullets. She was so distracted that she barely noticed that one was aiming a gun at her back, only for a wooden thud to get her attention. Nice try. Nami called to the now groaning pirate, flashing Makino a thumbs up with her bow staff still in hand. That unfortunately got two pirates to go after her, rushing at her with fists ready to pound her. Remembering Luffy's encouragement, Nami steeled her nerves even as her heart wanted to beat out of her dot. She blocked their fists, clacking the staff against their arms and then clubbing them in the face and between the legs. Before she knew it, Nami had them both on the ground. I'll be damned, Kuina admired, she really is one of us. Luffy laughed as the two ladies moved back to back. Yep. That's how crewmates should be. Protecting and helping each other. Is that so? A new, smug voice challenged. Luffy and Kuina noticed a man with long dark green hair on the half of his head that wasn't shaved off, a large blue and white checkered scarf that covered his neck, and yet the most striking thing was what was underneath him. A unicycle. You're the pirate huntress, the rider challenged, raising a cutlass at her. As chief of staff of the Buggy Pirates, I'll consider it an honor to cross blades with you. HMPH, we'll see about that, she scoffed, stepping forward with a hand on her katana, ready to draw at a moment's notice. Very well. Prepare to fall to Kabaji the acrobat. He pedaled forward on his one-wheeled steed, a pair of blades ready to attack. Kuina drew Wado Ichimonji an instant before a cross-lash could hit her, stopping the attack in its tracks. DCH, amateur, she boasted, pushing him back and readying herself for a counterattack only for Kabaji to start rapidly spinning in place. Murder in the steam bath. As the wheels spun around and around, a cloud of dust kicked up and obscured him from view. Kuina's eyes darted from side to side, trying to track where her opponent went. She raised her sword to stop a stab from the side, only for a foot to slam into her gut. Ugh. What the? Before she could worry about that, Kabaji spoke once again. Arsonist technique. A spout of orange flames roared from Kabaji's mouth, licking Kuina's arm and forcing her backwards. The Unisicalist rode in again, ready to slice her. Even as her arm blistered, the swordswoman blocked with ease and shoved him back. Are you serious? She yelled, sneak attacks, dust clouds, fire breath, what kind of swordsman are you? I claim victories for my captain, the only thing that matters. He bragged, locking blades again and giving Kuina another kick to the kidneys for her trouble. If you cling to paltry concepts like honor, you'll never win. Oh, so that's how you want to play it, huh, well, fine. Seeing as how she was dealing with a clown and not a proper duelist, Kuina decided to give him a taste of his own medicine. She channeled the pain from her burns and low blows, a red aura surrounding her body. Immediately her strength exploded, easily sending Kabaji skidding halfway across the street with a single shove. So, this is your true power. Kabaji awed, how exciting. Let's see you handle this. He opened the long blue coat up to reveal a massive collection of orange tops that he sent spinning at her. Dance of 100 kamikaze tops. Enough with your stupid tricks. Kuina ran forward, her feet kicking up dust as she ran faster than ever. Her arms were blurred as she slashed down the tops in record time, not one of them coming close to touching her. Kabaji's face turned as white as a sheet. What? How? No one's ever gotten through that. One sword style. The chief of staff readied his blades, but Kuina was in front of him in an instant, her katana an eerie red shade of blood. Scorpion venom. She stabbed the blade into his gut, making Kabaji squeal in agony before he was suddenly launched backwards by the force of her attack. The rest of the buggy pirates watched in horror as the other right-hand man of their captain was sent flying into an empty house, the building collapsing on his bleeding form and parts of his unicycle strewn on the path. What a disappointment, she sighed, 4.7 million for his head. The Marines are all getting soft. As her weight powers faded, Kuina gripped her scorched arm as the burns now encompassed her limb. She fell to her knees, gritting her teeth. Damn, gotta get used to that. Luffy then turned to Makino and Nami, standing over the defeated cronies. A proud smile was on his face as he turned to face Buggy, snarling like an enraged animal. You bunch of flashy upstarts. You've got no one left to hide behind, big nose. Let's settle this right now. Buggy suddenly had his hands filled with knives, 4 daggers in each clasped between his fingers. He pounced with all the grace of a rabid beast, Luffy easily catching one hand with a plain look. Really? Is that all you've got? Buggy proved it wasn't as his hand suddenly split off from his wrist, making Luffy yelp in surprise. He watched as the clown's entire torso separated and flew over him, Buggy cackling all the while. Considering yourself lucky, brat. Not just anyone gets to see the power of my chop fruit. Luffy then watched both hands popped off and rushed at, knives still clutched and ready to impale him. He was massively disappointed when the hands just circled around to his back, Luffy knocking them both aside like flies. Buggy flinched in shock. Seriously? What a waste, Luffy sighed, this is what I told Kuina. You aren't powerful just because you have a devil fruit. What are you talking about, you flashy idiot? I am uncuttable by any sword. Luffy suddenly appeared in front of him. Buggy could barely shout before a fist crashed into his bulbous nose and sent him tumbling. I don't use swords. Why you? Chop festival. Buggy's entire body split into discs, Luffy just shook his head. He didn't. His body soon looked like a tightly wound spring before suddenly reaching out to grab Buggy's disembodied head. Hey. How'd you? Gum. The lead is unraveled, his arms stretching out longer as Buggy screamed in panic. Wait. Stop. Whirlpool. Luffy's upper body became a red haze as he spun with the force of an actual cyclone, his elongated arms smashing into the segments of Buggy still flying around. And with each hit portion, Buggy's head yelped and grunted in pain as his head spun. Pretty soon Luffy came to a stop and looked at the clown's swirling eyes. Wimp Luffy then used a bit of armament on his forehead before slamming into Buggy's cranium, knocking the clown out cold. He turned and saw a few of Buggy's goons had come around in the wreckage, all of them sweating bullets at seeing their boss beaten. Stay down. They all did as demanded, pretending to still be unconscious. Luffy then went over to check on Kuina, offering her a hand up. Thanks, good job, Captain. Thanks. You're an awesome swordsman, Kuina. Pretty and badass. The brunette was about to laugh only for that first thing to catch her off guard. You think I'm pretty? Well, yeah. You are, he shrugged. He turned to get Makino and Nami, not noticing how the swordswoman's cheeks were heating up. Luffy was too busy rooting through the ruined tavern, eventually finding not only the actual chart they were after, but several Essen bags filled with treasure. Nami danced on her feet at her third major haul in a week, getting a chuckle out of Luffy. This time, however, the girl actually hugged him. So, what's that goal of yours? He asked. Nami blanched, backing away in suspicion only to lock eyes with a curious Makino. It's nothing, really. Luffy, don't. Nami, Luffy implored, a firm hand on her shoulder, you're my friend. I'd do anything to help you. You know that, right? She could feel it, the urge to say yes. This guy just took down Buggy the Clown, a menace to the entire East Blue. He could be the one. I'll tell you later, okay? Sure. Luffy then lifted up a section of flooring, making sure there wasn't anything left behind. The buggy pirates had scooped up Buggy's scattered parts and fled back to their ship as the straw hats worked, only getting brought out of it by the sound of approaching footsteps. They all looked up to see Mayor Boodle followed by dozens of people, staring in amazement. Where is he? One man with a pitchfork asked, where's Buggy? He's gone. They won't bother you guys anymore, Luffy announced, much to the astonishment of the entire town. They had all seen the buggy ball explode and just assumed those heroes that the mayor mentioned were goners. Boodle, however, was glowing with joy. See, I told you all. This crazy kid took down a lion twice his size. I told you Buggy didn't stand a chance. That's right. Nami added, in fact, he beat Buggy by himself in a minute flat. The townspeople gawked at Luffy, who was looking at Nami in confusion, before the entire town cheered in delight. Their town was saved. Everyone rushed to celebrate both the return of their normal lives and to honor the brave crew of adventurers, as Boodle had called them, responsible. "Would you do that?" Kuina asked. "I figured you deserved a little reward," Nami added, happily hoisting all of the treasure. "I already got mine." And so that night, the crew was in a familiar position as another party was thrown for them. Nami once again set off to count her loot, eagerly weighing every piece of gold. She can't remember the last time she felt so relaxed. Makino and Luffy had once again gone off on their own for some alone time. Once Luffy had his fill of the local cuisine, leaving Kuina by herself in front of the makeshift bar the townsfolk set up. At least they were very understanding about the trashed watering hole. Her burn was bandaged up and healing already, she had a fresh pint in her hands, and yet Kuina felt a pit in her stomach. She just couldn't get over how casually Luffy called her pretty. Yes, she was 22. Yes, many guys had tried hitting on her before. Most of them were in blood loss-induced comas. So why did Luffy's casual passeter stick with her? And, even weirder, why did it make her happy? Theory for your thoughts. Kuina turned to see Makino sitting next to her, politely asking the person behind the newly constructed counter for a surprise. "What's his deal?" Kuina started, "Aren't you his girlfriend?" "You could say that, yes. And you heard what he said to me? He complimented you. Why is that wrong? And you're not upset?" Makino took a sip from her drink, admiring the brew for a moment before answering. "Why would I be upset? Luffy just spoke his mind. That's what he does." Kuina balked. She expected an argument or even a fight, not to be calmly sharing a drink over her new captain hitting on her. "Let me explain something about Luffy. He says exactly what he feels. He doesn't mince words. And he can't lie to save his life." Really let that thought sit and realized what made Luffy's compliment different. It was the tone. It wasn't flattery or an attempt to get in her pants. It was just honest. And she honestly couldn't remember the last time any man behaved around her that way, if ever. "Come with me." Makino got up and left, prompting Kuina to head off with her. They headed through the festivities going on in the streets to the town inn. As they went, Makino explained the predicament she found herself in. "Luffy is a truly great man, but I just can't handle him all by myself. So, I was wondering." Whoa, wait a minute, are you suggesting that we share him?" "Essentially, yes. I'm guessing you haven't had a lot of male companions, have you?" Kuina blushed again. The few guys she met that weren't Total S or the students from her father's dojo were her old bounty hunting partners, but they never once showed interest in her. "Well, he can give us both what we want. Would you be interested?" By now the two were standing outside the door to the inn's biggest suite. Makino had asked for it just for this situation, but at least could get the complimentary breakfast tomorrow either way. She knocked on the door. "Luffy? It's me, with that surprise I mentioned. Is it more of that chicken?" Kuina raised an eyebrow, but Makino just laughed. "No, silly." The girls headed in to find Luffy simply dangling his feet over the footboard as he laid on the mattress. He sat up upon seeing someone unexpected. "Kuina. She's the surprise." I guess." "Now, before you get the wrong idea," Makino interceded. "Let me show you something." "Luffy?" "Yeah? Do you think Kuina is pretty?" "Well, yeah." Again, the swordswoman heard how frank he sounded. It made her blush, then scold herself for acting like some dumb little girl. "If you could get to know her like you would me, would you?" Luffy's eyebrows shot up. Kuina crossed her arms, expecting him to trip over himself. She was then dumbfounded when Luffy looked confused at Makino. "But isn't that wrong? Luffy, we're pirates. And isn't being a pirate all about freedom?" He seemed to roll that idea in his head before stopping. "Yeah, but what about you?" "Wait, what?" Kuina asked, "Are you serious?" "About what?" "You have your girlfriend offering another girl to you, and you don't jump on that." She balked, any other guy would be creaming his pants. Makino laughed while Luffy tilted his head. What did cream have to do with all this? And why was Nika laughing himself stupid, again? "You see what I mean?" The bartender peeked. "Luffy here is truly a wonderful soul, and as much as I would love to keep him to myself, I just can't handle him. Let me really show you what I mean." Kuina then watched as Makino brought Luffy in for it, the pirate reciprocating in a second. Her hands then went under his shirt, feeling up his muscles, and once his arms wrapped around her shoulders. The brunette wondered just what the point of this all was until she noticed Luffy's jeans groaning in protest as his erection swelled bigger and bigger by the second. "How is that real?" Makino separated a strand of saliva on her as she chuckled. "See the problem now? Luffy isn't just the kindest man I know, but so hungover that I just can't handle him by myself. So, how about we share him? We both get what we want and he gets every man's dream." She then looked back at Luffy. That is, if you like the idea. The captain stood from the bed and walked over to Kuina, looking more and more flustered by the minute. He placed a hand under her chin. If you don't want this, then you don't have to, was all he said, sincerity obvious in his tone and look. Kuina's jaw dropped. She could tell he was being perfectly honest. Heck, he could force her into this as her captain, but the thought never crossed his mind. Kuina felt that same warmth in her, quickly getting stoked into a passionate heat. One she had ignored for far too long. What's going on in there? Nami yelled, tapping her foot impatiently outside the door. She knew this was where the front desk said Luffy was sleeping. She thought they were leaving half an hour ago, but apparently the captain decided to sleep in. That's it, I'm coming in. Nobody stopped her as she easily picked the door's lock and waltzed in to give him a piece of her mind, only to stop dead in her tracks. Luffy was actually up in the shower, judging from the steam pouring out underneath the bathroom door. What made her freeze was seeing two shapes underneath the covers, still sleeping soundly. Nami put two and two together and promptly spun on her heels, deciding they could have all the time in the world to themselves. She would just go count her money again and desperately try to get that image out of her head. As Nami laid back on her sacks of treasure, she made sure to keep her eyes to the map and not to the other boat. Not only so she could thoroughly study the chart of the Grand Line, but to avoid reliving her discovery from that morning. She did dare to peek and was pleasantly surprised. Luffy was explaining something to Kuina, as casual and friendly as ever, while Makino was rooting around their supplies for something to eat. Well, at least he knows time and place, Nami sighed before thinking back. In the past week, she made off with Alvida's treasure, cleaned out Morgan's safe, and now she bagged a huge haul from Buggy the freaking Clown. The sacks behind her had to have well over 15 million in cash and precious items, more than her entire last year and a half. And that was with leaving a few million behind in Orange Town so they could rebuild the blown-up buildings. She looked at Luffy, a guy she would have passed on the street and most likely picked his pocket. A goofball who laughed at the stupidest things, a glutton who ate for 10 every meal, and apparently a lover of ladies if last night was an idea. And yet this guy had walked through two wanted pirates and the most feared marine captain around. For the first time in ages, Nami saw a way out. This guy had barely flinched at anything. What were a few fishmen? Earth to Nami. Ah. She slipped onto her back, sitting back up with a groan as Kuina looked at her. If you want to nap, we've got pillows and blankets. You don't need to use your treasure bags. Gee, thanks. What's up, Nami? Luffy asked. I need you to defeat an entire pirate crew of. The words almost ran out her mouth, forcing Nami to clamp it shut. She noticed Luffy and both other women staring at her now. Nothing. Whatever. So, anyway, where are we heading next? Makino asked. Just because we have the chart of the Grand Line doesn't mean we should set out right away. That's right, Nami agreed, navigation putting her mind at ease. In these little boats, we wouldn't last a day. What we need is a proper pirate ship, both to better withstand the weather and so that others see us as easy pickings. Fortunately, I might know just the place. She stepped onto Luffy's boat, the captain eagerly watching behind her shoulder as she unraveled one of her many charts on the East Blue. Not too far from here are the Gecko Islands and the little town of Syrup Village. There's only one thing of note here. A mansion belonging to the owner of the most prolific shipping companies in the sea. Are you suggesting we pull off a raid? Makino asked to her left, because that might be crossing too far into Morganeer territory. Nami raised an eyebrow at that. Luffy answered, the fake pirates who steal and kill for no reason. Ooh. Well, trust me, we won't have to do anything like that. Because the current owner of the company died at sea several years ago, leaving behind a young lady who is only months away from formally inheriting the company. She's been so wrought with grief at her father's passing that's practically bedridden all day, hardly able to properly run the business. Where did you hear about all of this? Kuina asked to her right, suspicious. What, have you scoped this place out already? I gathered the intel but I never went. It seemed way too far out of the way, and I'd still rather take money from scumbag pirates than a sick girl who just wants her father back. The real perk here is that this heiress is supposed to be quite generous and kind, as was her father. If we ask really nicely and maybe leave out how we're pirates, she can give us a ship. Luffy cheered. Nami, that's awesome. You're so smart. He wraps his arms around her shoulders, making the navigator's cheeks flush the color of her hair. She tries to ignore the swelling warmth in her stomach or how both Kuina and Makino both flash cheeky smiles at her. Nami just shot them both with a glare. Luffy might have been a great guy, but she would sooner jump overboard than join their little posse. She would be a navigator, and that was it. Over the next few days, Luffy began introducing everyone to observation hockey. And to prove he was not spouting nonsense, he had Nami try to beam him with her bow staff while he was blindfolded. Several minutes of dodging later, an impressed Kuina and a winded Nami began their first bit of meditation to focus their willpower and harness this new ability. Whenever they weren't doing that, life aboard Luffy's little S was very casual. They told jokes and stories to pass the time. They ate from their provisions, with Luffy pouting whenever cut off and making the rest laugh. They shared drinks and acted as true companions. Nami couldn't remember the last time she had so much fun. But whenever night came and the anchors were lowered, that was when she was truly conflicted. There was only a small bed on the inside the cabin of the fishing boat, a bit too short for Luffy to sleep on properly. He offered it to any of the women first, figuring he slept on the floor of a bandit hut for years. And, touched by his chivalry, his two lovers took turns dragging him inside for a night of pleasure. Each time, Nami tried to drown out the noise. The S of pleasure, the womanly screams and masculine grunts, and the rhythmic smacking of flesh on flesh that grew faster, louder and wilder by the minute. She couldn't help but start to wonder what it would be like. Luffy said he would do anything for her, after all. Her only solace was that they were finished long before the night was over and she could still get some sleep. Now if only she didn't start having dreams about this. It was almost a relief that they finally spotted the small chain of the landmasses that were the Gecko Islands, Nami directing them to one of two small inlets that were the only ways into the village. But as they pulled in, the navigator froze up when she spotted something else on the shoreline. Another small tugboat with a bright blue paint job. I guess someone else is here, Makino shrugged. Do you recognize it, Nami? Yeah, and I have a bad feeling as to why she's here. The four pirates touched down, and Nami was busy scanning the small town for any trace of this other visitor. The other three were pleasantly surprised by just how laid back and quiet this town was. Dirt roads, plenty of space between each cottage, and very friendly locals who waved and greeted them. When Luffy asked for anywhere to eat, one of the villagers pointed them to the best and only restaurant in town. And as they walked inside, Nami stopped and stared at the only customer inside. Oh, great. Nami, is that you? The other woman gawked, immediately getting the rest of the crew's attention. Her hair was a light purple and draped down to her shoulders, whipping around as she stood. The real attention grabber was her outfit, a tight black evening dress that highlighted a giftedly curvy body, a golden fringe skirt loving most of her long legs exposed. The beautiful newcomer walked right up and hugged Nami tightly, a beaming smile on her face. It's been so long. What have you been up to? Oh, you know, Nami sighed, nowhere near as enthusiastic, still working, just trying to make ends meet. Is this a friend of yours? Makino asked, sensing just how uncomfortable Nami was. The redhead then stepped back. Everyone, this is Kuina. She and I used to be partners, you could say. Oh, you don't have to make it sound so formal. Kuina insisted, still smiling as the pirate crew took the nearest table. Nami and I were the best pair of hustlers in the whole East Blue. Everything from gambling halls to rich rubes in their mansions, no one in this whole sea was safe from us. Yeah, up until you ditched me. Kuina's grin faltered at that, noticing how the rest of the table now glared at her. Well, I meant to check up on you, but I didn't know which island you lived on. I asked and you refused to tell me. Nami then flinched. Luffy was now looking very confused, only focusing on the lone employee of this establishment coming by to take their order. If she noticed anything about a bunch of people openly discussing their criminal pasts, she didn't say a word, even as she brought out a plate of meat and potatoes for the rest and an entire roast chicken for Luffy some time later. Okay, so it's pretty clear you two have a long history, Makino summed up, but what exactly are you here for, Kuina? Oh, just a little business. Kuina's eyes locked on the window and the towering white and blue manor on the hill overlooking the town. Of course you are, Nami sighed. Look, normally I'd never tell another thief how to run her jobs. I'm sensing a but here. We have business there, Luffy cuts in, we need to ask a girl there for a ship. Kuina looks at him, her eyes clearly running along his muscles before stopping at the determined look in his eyes. I suppose that's a fair deal. I'll wait until you're all gone before making my move. Luffy then happily dug into his food and then retook her seat at the bar and finished her drink in peace. And while Makino and Kuina chatted like normal, Nami felt something in her gut. It couldn't be a coincidence that she ran into her ex-cohort for the first time in 3 years here, of all places. It was hunches that kept her alive so far, like the one that had her follow Luffy off the cruise ship. But once they had all eaten and Kuina made a point of heading back into town instead of towards the estate, the Straw Hats figured now was as good as any time to meet this heiress. Luffy led the way as they walked out of Syrup Village and towards the hill. The two-story house was not only large but of impeccable quality, with a 10-foot-tall hedge surrounding the perimeter, a wrought iron gate up front, and 2 guards in black suits monitoring the entrance. As soon as they got within 20 feet of the front gate, one of the suits blocked their path. State your business. Makino moved to the front and gave the guard a winning smile. Good morning, sir. We are here to negotiate with the lady of the house for a ship. With what money? We left it back on our ship. You understand, I'm sure. Even in a sleepy town like this, it's best not to attract too much attention. Do you have an appointment? Unfortunately, we don't have a transponder snail. Then I'm sorry, but you all must leave then. The lady of the house is currently ill and doesn't have the constitution for unexpected arrivals. He did at least hand them a business card with a number to call to make said appointment, but it was clear the crew was not getting in the official way. Luffy, naturally, simply walked along the hedge wall until it was figured the guard couldn't see him. With a single leap, he was over the hedge and touched down on the freshly cut lawn. He glanced up and noticed there was an open window. A quick look with observation revealed someone in there, an aura with a sickly feel to it. He leapt onto the tree above him and looked inside, seeing a young blonde woman reading a book as she sat under the covers. Her only clothing was a pale blue nightgown, her fair skin seemed a touch pale. And she was so engrossed in her book that she didn't even notice the pirate standing outside her window until a breeze blew in and caught her attention. Who are you? How did you get in here? Sorry about that, he apologizes, bound for good measure, but I need to buy a ship from you, and I don't know anywhere else to go. Buy a ship. She repeats, completely caught off guard by his polite demeanor that clashes with his rugged looks. When he stands up again, she's caught off guard again by the honesty in his eyes. Yeah, we have plenty of money. I'm willing to talk, miss. Kaya, my name is Kaya. And I'm sorry you were turned away, but… Stop right there. How did you get in here? Luffy looked down and saw a tall man with black clothes, equally black hair that slicked back and a steely gaze behind his glasses. Kaya herself got up and looked out the window, gasping in surprise. Clahater, what are you doing? I was about to ask this trespasser the same thing, Miss Kaya. I leave for 10 minutes, and there's some hooligan trying to barge into your quarters. Who's this guy? Luffy asked. I am the head butler of this house, and Miss Kaya's caretaker, Clahater answered, and I suggest you leave right now before I have security drag you away. Clahater, hold on. Kaya protested, he hasn't done anything wrong. He wants to buy a ship from me, that's all. Oh, is that so? I don't remember scheduling any meetings for you today, or in the immediate future. You are far too unwell to conduct any sort of business as it is, let alone with some ruffian letting himself inside like a common criminal. Okay, sheesh, Luffy shrugged, I'll go. It was nice meeting you, Kaya. He bowed once again, figuring that Makino taught him such manners for a reason, before walking past Clahater. The pirate spared the butler a glance. What? Nothing. Clahater headed into the front door, fixing his glasses with his wrist before huffing at Luffy as the pirate hopped over the gate again. The guards gasped in shock at how easily they were bypassed, while Luffy brought the rest of the crew to an isolated spot along the main road to talk things over. One quick recap later and Nami was rubbing her chin in thought. This Clahater seems awfully invested in Kaya's life. He's a hard ass who takes his job way too seriously, so what? Kuina asked, I say we just meet with this girl and get it over with. Can we at least try to do things the easy way? Not all of us need to have life or death fights every day. Now, I'm sure this butler is just protective of his employer, Makino assured before turning around. Although is there something you'd like to add, Karina? How'd you do that? Asked the black-clad thief, peeking from behind the tree a ways away in total shock. Crew secret, Nami blurted, now get out here. I know you'd never jump into a job blind. Karina chuckled as she walked up to them, admitting that she was pegged. Okay, yeah, I scoped the place out for a few days. Pretty consistently guarded, the gate and the hedge are pretty normal for big fancy houses. But the real kicker is that butler every day he goes around the village and not just for errands. And he always corrects his glasses the same way, with his wrist. There's something wrong with him, Luffy surmised, he's hiding something big. I can tell. What, thanks to that crew secret? Yes, all four of them answered, shocking Karina. She especially looked at Nami. Wait, hold on a minute. You are on this crew? Yes. Like, permanently? Yes. I'd rather die than be a pirate. She has her reasons, Luffy said, and she helped us out against Buggy the Clown, that's all that matters to me. While Nami blushed a bit at that, Karina's jaw fell open. You all fought Buggy the Clown and won. No, Makino said, Luffy here fought Buggy the Clown and won. We took care of the rest of his crew. Nami backed me up in particular, saved my life at least once with that staff of hers. Now the lady thief was trying to stay standing up. These nobodies she's never heard of managed to topple one of the East Blue's heaviest hitters, and somehow this chiseled hunk of a captain convinced Nami of all people to sign up. Focus, Karina, you have a job to do, and it isn't getting into those shorts. Yeah, I know it sounds ridiculous, Nami pointed out, but this guy really is a different kind of pirate. He went after Buggy to get the chart I was after and saved Kuina's life from a tyrannical jerk of a marine captain. Kuina blinked several times, making sure that this is all really happening. And as if this day could not get any weirder, she turned and swore she saw a man walking backwards. As the others looked up to notice, Kuina realized he wasn't walking so much as shuffling his feet forwards as he faced backwards to look like he was floating along. The others all blinked too, especially as they noticed his dark blue coat and hat, heart-shaped glasses with red rims, and a goatee that was wrapped in some kind of colorful tube. "Excuse me," he said as shuffled right past them. Kuina shook her head in disbelief, but she noticed Luffy was staring at the stranger intently. "He's off too," he noted, getting nods from the three women around him. Now Kuina was getting annoyed, hands on her and wondering what the inside joke was. As the oddball of a man disappeared down the path, Luffy stood up saying he was taking a walk. As the captain left, Kuina turned to the girls. "Okay, what's with him?" "Sorry, can't tell you," Kuina said flatly, pulling out her sword. "I'm gonna go train back by our ship." The swordswoman left in the opposite direction, Makino following shortly after. That left Nami leaning against a fence along the path while Kuina stood over her. "Before you ask, no, I'm not helping you rob Kaya," the navigator said with her eyes closed, "or telling you Luffy's secrets. Kind of like how you'd never tell me what you need 100 million for." Nami's eyes shot open as she glared at Kuina's curious face. "How do you know about that? You talk in your sleep. And look, I want to get rich just as much as the next girl, but maybe it's time you drop that whole shtick already. Unless you want to buy your own island." Nami got to her feet and walked after Luffy, her eyes smoldering. Kuina felt a twinge of guilt and decided she should apologize. It was just like their old jobs all over again. They would pull off a job, then get into arguments and fights over how to divvy up the loot. Nami was never happy with only half of the haul, but Kuina refused to budge. And so, one day, Kuina left out the window while Nami was sleeping and let her take the fall from robbing some stuffy nobleman. "And if it weren't for me taking all the cash, she'd be in jail right now," she thought bitterly, knowingly painting Nami as a helpless accomplice while Kuina took all the heat along with the treasure. She might be a crook, but she didn't want to see a 15-year-old girl getting thrown in a cell if she could help it. Kuina stops as she sees Nami and Luffy sitting under a tree overlooking the island's cliffs. For some reason, the Redite is curled up on herself like she's freezing cold while her captain sits nearby. "Luffy, did you mean what you said?" "About what?" "That you'd do anything for a friend." The captain turned aside and spotted Kuina, her flinching in surprise. Seriously, how was he constantly able to pick up on her? "Yeah, I did." Nami was about to speak up when something apparently caught her attention below the ridge. Kuina, curious as always, walked up to see for herself and gaped. The butler from the mansion and the backwards walking man from the road were meeting with each other. "I trust you were not followed, Django." "Of course not, Captain. The crew is ready to commence the plan." The pirate and the thieves got down on their stomachs to avoid being spotted as they listened in. The ladies' faces turned wide as they overheard this Django discuss a plot with the Clahater or, as the other man called him, Captain Kuro. "But that's impossible." Kuina balked, "He was executed 3 years ago. I read all about it in the World Economy News. It made the front page." "Well, he's not lying," Luffy stated, "and he's pissed me off." They all overheard Kuro repeat his entire plan. To have his crew of Black Cat pirates ransack the village the following morning, with Django hypnotizing Kaya into leaving her entire estate and fortune in her will before dying in a tragic accident. "Oh my god, that's despicable." Nami almost gagged. "What kind of monster is he?" "He's a fake." Kuina was about to ask what Luffy meant before the straw-hatted man stood up and jumped straight off the cliff. They shouted in alarm, making Kuro and Django glance up just in time to see the other pirates barreling towards. "What the?" They both yelled as Luffy crashed down in front of them, the stone cracking under his feet. You're the trespasser from the mansion," Kuro remembered before turning in anger. "What happened to not being followed, Django?" "I wasn't, I swear. I was facing the path the whole time and never saw him once." "I heard it all," Luffy warned. "You're both going to leave Kaya alone." "What is he doing?" Kuina whimpered. "He's making himself a target." "That's what he does," Nami told her. "Luffy doesn't run away from anything. And he hates pirates like him." "Oh, is that so?" Kuro challenged, adjusting his glasses again with a sneer. "What, do you intend to warn the villagers? They'll never believe an outsider like you." Luffy raised his gaze, his black eyes piercing as a wave of force erupted from him. Django collapsed dead on his back, foam leaking out of his mouth, while Kuro fell to his knees in shock. Sweat matted his brow and his glasses fell off his face in the drop. The fuck, he didn't even touch them. Kuina turned to Nami for an answer, but her old partner was in total shock as well. "Call off this plan." Kuro got to his feet, dusting off his suit and realigning his lenses as he tried to hide the panic in his eyes. He had never felt something like that, and even the fabled man of 1,000 plans had no idea what that was. But seeing as this man had not even flinched since dropping close to 10 stories, Kuro felt it was better to play it safe. Very well. You have my word that no harm will befall Kaya. Kuro then turned on his heel to leave, leaving Django to eventually get back to the ship on his own. Luffy casually leapt back up the cliffside with Moonwalk, making Kuina truly wonder what kind of black magic this man had. He's a total liar, he grumbled, we need to stop him before he kills Kaya and the whole town. He then turned to Kuina, looking much kinder. You, on the other hand, can leave here before anything happens. Take it, Nami warned her, he's going to take that bastard down, and his entire crew. Being a pickpocket isn't going to help here. What, you managed to get lucky against some random thugs, and you think you're a fighter now? At least I don't ditch people in the middle of the night. Nami yelled back, pointing into Kurina's face, you still haven't said sorry for that, you bitch. Oh, I'm a bitch really, Kuina shouted right back, smacking Nami's hand away, you're the one who has this insane goal. What the fuck could you need so much money for? That's for me to know. Now get out of my face before I shove my stuff between your legs. Oh, what? You're not gonna sick your superpowered captain on me? I could have him eating out of my hands. And so Luffy watched as the two girls screamed like banshees and threw insult after insult at each other, bringing up every single mistake the other made over their 2 years as partners. From botching jobs to just low blows, Luffy walked along the path back towards his ship as Nami followed him with Kuina following her. He just shrugged at the curious looks the villagers gave as they continued to point fingers and yell barbs at the other. It was only when Luffy came within sight of his S and Kuina still beached nearby that the argument stopped. Would you both shut up, Kuina yelled, bashing them both on the head with the handle of her katana, I could hear you halfway across the island. Sorry, they both muttered, nursing their new smoking bumps before slowly standing up. Makino stood between them, a hand on each shoulder. Look, it's quite obvious you two parted on bad terms. I obviously can't know about every little thing that happened, but you are both here now. She then turned to Nami. I do, however, know you are a tenacious and cunning girl who's needing help. Huh? Help? With what? This goal you have. Nami turned on Luffy, eyes wide in shock. Whenever you want to tell me, I'm here. Okay. She shakily nodded, a nod from Luffy making her stomach flutter, but not in panic for a change. Makino then went over to Kuina, making her step back. And Kuina, you might be a career thief, but we're hardly one to judge that. We don't blame you for wanting to leave. Kurina's mouth dropped. They were actually going to let her walk out in the clear, no strings attached. This had to be a con of their own. She turned to look at each pirate in turn, expecting a tell. No twitching eyes and their hands were all by their sides. I told you, Luffy isn't that kind of pirate, Nami reminded her, if he says you can go, he won't try to stop you. Well, I do feel awful about all this. Why? Aren't you a thief? Hey. I was planning on breaking in to get some jewels. I'd never pillage a town or slice the girl's throat. The others all nodded in approval, Nami looking particularly impressed until Kuina walked up to her, eyes full of regret. And even for my line of work, I've done things I'm not proud of, including abandoning the only real partner I ever trusted. I'm sorry, Nami. Nami could hardly say more, just grabbing a hold of her old friend with a fierce hug. The two stood there, embracing each other for a moment as the rest smiled before Kuina stepped back. As nice as that is, right now we have a situation to deal with. That Kuro can't be allowed to get Kaya's money. Because that means you can't have it? Kuina asked with a smirk. Kuina just flipped her hair back, smiling without a hint of shame. In that case, I have a plan, Nami said, an equally devious grin on her face before everyone huddled up. It was time for the Straw Hat Pirates to get to work. Night began to fall on Syrup Village, and the entire crew was informed of the devious pirates' plan. Since the rest of the crew was not attacking until dawn, the Peace main crew had only tonight to stop Kuro. Makino had spotted the pirate ship less than an hour away from the shore. She and Kuina would then guard that slope in case the buccaneers tried to invade early. That left Luffy, Nami, and Kuina surrounding the estate to catch Kuro. Luffy noted that most of the house seemed to be empty, a far cry from this morning, where he could sense over a dozen people inside. The thieves knew it was a classic criminal tactic. Send any witnesses off somewhere out of sight so there would be less obstacles in the way. The veteran thieves were peeking in through the hedge, both watching the house through binoculars. Kuina had traded in her evening dress for a simple black tee and shorts, figuring she needed something more practical for a job, even if she wasn't robbing the place anymore. Each lady started along one side of the wall until they met up along the back side. With nothing to report, both peeked in and spotted the large window on the first floor. Must be some kind of drawing room, Nami noted. There's an old guy with white hair and little horns. He's just moving some things around. That's Mary, Kuina remembered, he's pretty much the other head of running things here. Unlike Kuro, he seems pretty legitimate. And speaking of that bastard. Kuina looked in as well and saw the mastermind himself walk in, staring up at the moon with reverence. Both ladies watched as Mary chatted away before presenting a little wrapped box for him. They carefully read the older butlers and paled. It was the 3-year anniversary of Kuro's arrival. And their dread grew to revulsion as they watched Kuro take the present, a brand new set of glasses, and throw it to the ground before stomping on it. Mary was in shock before Kuro brought out some kind of gloves with each finger ending in a foot-long blade and slashed the kindly servant across the dot. That's just sick. Nami growled before putting her tools away, we need to get him, now. Give me a boost. Kuina immediately complied, crouching down so Nami could eventually stand on her shoulders and then grab onto the top of the hedge. Thankfully the topiary was extremely dense, so she could get a firm handhold and pull herself up to the top. She jumped inside and quickly pulled out the only thing in her bag of tricks, a brick. Hatch this. She chucked the masonry through the glass, forcing Kuro to dodge aside. He glanced outside and glared daggers at Nami. I saw everything, you psycho. She even flipped him off before dashing away as fast as she could, urged on by Kuro's footsteps following close behind her. And such an obvious racket also got the attention of a certain young lady sleeping upstairs. Kaya murmured, what was that noise? The SST. She turned aside to her still open window. Ah. What are you doing back here? Luffy was once again standing on the tree branch, but he seemed on edge this time. Come with me. You need to see something. Is this some kind of negotiation tactic? No, it's to save your life. Luffy then leaped in, easily lifted Kaya into a bridal carry and then jumped back outside. Hey. You'll thank me later. He then hopped onto the roof of the house, making Kaya terrified that she was getting kidnapped. Except as they reached the front of the manor, Luffy stopped and Kaya noticed something else. A red-headed girl was running away from Clahater. What are those things on his hands? She wondered, considering how dangerous the bladed gloves looked. The heiress then saw another woman clad in all black picking the lock on the front gate. Where are the guards? Quick, this way. Kuina yelled as she pried the gate open for Nami to escape. The bespectacled butcher, however, was not going to let them escape. He seemed to disappear momentarily before reappearing just in front of Kuina, making her holler in horror. Well. You're the nosy new woman around town I've been spotting. We really must stop running into each other like this. He placed a knife under her chin, his other hand pointing 5 blades straight at Nami. Both of you will follow me inside. Run or scream and I'll kill you where you stand. What is he doing? Kaya muttered, utterly terrified, he can't just kill them. They're intruders at worst. Just keep watching. As hard as it was, she listened to Luffy and watched as Kuro slowly led them to the front door. Nami looked up and spotted her captain, giving a slight nod before she disappeared into the abandoned house. Kaya was soon in Luffy's arms again as he jumped down and silently followed behind. The blonde was shocked to see none of the housekeepers going through the halls. Kuro soon escorted Nami and Kuina past a long dining table and into a set of double doors with windows peering in, the kitchen. Luffy then stopped a foot away, a finger over his as he looked at Kaya. Now they could plainly hear everything said. Well, what do you two miscreants have to say for yourselves? Kuro demanded. We heard everything. Kuina said boldly, on the cliffside, we heard you talking to that hypnotist. And you're not gonna kill Kaya for her money. Kuro let out a truly diabolical chuckle as he nudged his glasses up with his wrist, the blades only inches away from his face. Is that so? 2 women, one armed only with a basic brick, are going to stop me? Pray, how do you plan on doing that? I don't know, how do you fake your own death? Nami asked pointedly, I thought Captain Kuro was executed by the Navy years ago. Curse that idiot Django, that was actually quite easy, with a hypnotist at your disposal. Simply find the crewmate on board with a passing resemblance to yourself, have him hypnotized into thinking he's Captain Kuro, and then find the only living marine on board and brainwash him into being the brave hero who defeated the feared pirate. What kind of a heartless monster are you? Kuina yelled, you can't just go around using people. Your own men aren't expendable. Of course they are. Those barbarians only know pillaging and mayhem. Who do you think kept them in line? And that's exactly the reason for this whole plan. Once I have Kaya's fortune to myself, Captain Kuro will be truly dead and Clahater will live a life of peace and quiet. I'm sorry, what? Kuro turned and gasped as none other than Kaya burst through the door, shaking in rage. Miss Kaya, what are you doing out of bed? Shut up, you liar. She yelled, amazing the thieves with how loud she could be. I heard everything. I can't believe you. My father saved your life, gave you a home. We've paid you well, offered benefits, I even custom ordered a brand new pair of glasses for your anniversary today. Which he smashed right before attacking Mary, Kuina added. Be what? Now, Miss Kaya, please. You mustn't fall for some elaborate con. Oh yeah, are they the ones who ordered all the staff to leave? Kuro flinched. He honestly was stuck. There was no way to talk his way out. Then his eyes caught sight of Luffy through the kitchen door and growled like an enraged dog. "Get in here, pirate." Luffy did as told, glaring at Kuro even as the criminal's claws were poised to strike. "We've got you, Kuro. Leave now with your crew while you still can. You must think yourself clever, don't you?" Kuro's feet seemed to blur together for a few minutes before he materialized behind Nami and Kuina, his blades scraping along their necks. Kaya gasped in horror and Luffy's jaw tightened. "Now, allow me to tell you what will actually happen. You and your entire crew either stand down or die just like the rest of this backwater village. And I get the peace and quiet I so rightfully deserve. Why? Why do all of this? Did all those years mean nothing to you?" The fiend's glare somehow grew even colder looking at Kaya. "Oh, quite the opposite, it did mean something to me. It forced me to swallow my pride and serve an impudent child with a smile. That accident that befell your father was the first good news I'd received in ages." She crumpled to the floor, feeling faint. Luffy gently took her in his arms, his own temper ready to boil over. "Let my friends go, or I'm gonna kick your ass. Take another step and your lady friends lose their necks. You know, as much as I hate you, you did do one thing right." Luffy's foot tapped the ground a dozen times in a second. "Shave." He disappeared from sight, making Kuro blanch. "What?" That was as far as Kuro got before he was grabbed by the throat and thrown into the kitchen wall, pots and pans clattering on top of him. "Keep Kaya safe. I'll take care of this." Kuina didn't need to be told twice, taking the rich girl by the hand and leading back up to her room. Nami stayed behind just long enough to say, "Kick his ass, Captain." Of course. But some of his good cheer restored, Luffy turned to face Kuro as the latter stood up in front of the dented metal plating. "Drr, how? How do you know the pussyfoot maneuver?" Luffy could not help but chuckle. "Seriously? That's what you call it? Answer me. I specifically developed this technique." Luffy's answer was to use shave again, blitzing away before sending Kuro flying again with a punch. This time he was flung out of the kitchen and shakily stood up in the dining room. "Just get out of here," Luffy ordered, "your speed is the only thing you've got." "Oh, you think so? I can't believe I'm resorting to this on a single impudent child, but I will not let 3 years of hard work go to waste." Kuro suddenly slumped forward as if dead on his feet. Luffy put his guard up instantly, his gut warning him. Then the ex-butler started swaying from side to side, his arms limp and his claws gleaming in the moonlight streaming in from the window. Out of the back attack. He disappeared in a puff of purple smoke, actually making Luffy flinch. He had to stretch his observation in order to properly track him before noticing lines of claw marks ripping into the walls and slicing several pieces of furniture. As more and more strikes missed him, though, the pirate shook his head in disappointment. The guy manages to actually outdo Shave and makes the attack completely random. PCH. Iron body. Luffy clenched his muscles as hard as he could, needing to end this now before Kuro potentially sliced a load-bearing wall. And sure enough, the blitzing butler was knocked aside as his claws tried and failed to break Luffy's defense. "Ugh, what was that?" Kuro murmured, very obviously confused. How did something stop me?" "I did. Now stop messing around." "Drr, you're damn lucky I missed you." Kuro then looked down at one of his cat claws and felt the urge to vomit. All 5 blades were shattered, broken into dozens of fragments apiece. Then he looked up at Luffy and saw the gash running across his vest, yet the skin underneath was perfectly fine. How? 2. You're fast, I'll give you that." Luffy once again shaved over before dropping a kick on Kuro's hand, laying against the floor in fear. The schuster screamed in pain as every bone was broken instantly, along with the knives breaking into shards. But for someone with so many plans, you sure can be stupid. Kuro realized that his entire plan had long since gone belly up, ever since he let this man live at the cliffside. He gibbered and begged for mercy, even crying for Miss Kaya to please save him, as Luffy beat him into a bloody pulp. The sinister red and black galleon with a giant black cat for a figurehead was moored only 100 feet from the shore, Django being the first to reach land. It took him a while to notice 3 figures standing at the top of the slope leading into Syrup Village. 2 ladies he'd never seen before stood on either side of the straw-hatted teen he and the captain ran into yesterday. "What do you think you're doing?" the hypnotist demanded. "We have a deadline to keep, and Captain Kuro won't stomach one of his plans being derailed." "You're gonna have to go through us." Luffy shouted back, "Turn around right now." The rest of the Black Cat pirate simply charged ahead, bellowing for blood and mayhem. Luffy, Makino and Kuina rushed down the cliff to meet them. The minute the 2 sides met, bodies started flying. Luffy disappeared with Shave, laying dozens of pirates flat in seconds. Makino knocked one especially burly buccaneer back with a burst from her hands, bowling over a dozen in the process. And Kuina lived up to her title as pirate huntress as her blade moved faster than the eye could see, sending any mark down to the floor in a groaning heap. Django could scarcely believe it. Not even 5 minutes and a bunch of children were beating them. He ground his teeth until he noticed 3 more figures looking down from the cliffs. The purple-haired lady he barely saw yesterday, a red-deeded woman he saw and some blonde girl in a bathrobe. Wait a minute, isn't that Kaya? Yep. The red-deed taunted, she wanted a front row seat to you pirates getting your butts kicked. Drr arrogant little brat. Django pulled out a small chakram from his coat pocket, take this. He threw the silver disc and it whizzed right towards them. Around halfway on its flight, though, a stretchy arm lashed out to grab the weapon. What? The man in the hat was in front of Django in seconds, the very air around him shimmering in rage. His eyes looked out from under his hat to the trembling hypnotist, then to the weapon. You're gonna pay for that, Luffy said before crushing the metal in his grip like it was clay. Oh my, Kaya gasped, how did he move so fast? Beats me, Kuina shrugged, but I knew there was something I liked about him the moment I saw him. Nami just rolled her eyes before looking back at the beatdown, her heart swelling as Luffy and the others tore through another infamous crew like they were child's play. He can do it, she thought with relish, he can help me, I finally found someone. As the fight started winding down, even the ship's guards proving helpless thanks to Makino and Kuina and Nami, walked down from the cliff and started happily picking the pockets of every beaten black cat they saw. And the few who tried to grab onto them were met with either a bow staff to the face or a stomp between the legs. Soon the only one left standing was Django, blubbering in terror. Why you idiots? When Captain KK Kuro gets here, he'll kill us all. Oh yeah? Luffy turned around and looked up at Kaya, the blonde girl nodding before reaching down to haul a burlap sack from behind her. She untied the rope binder the lip and reached down to pull out a badly beaten man. Captain Kuro? The entire enemy crew yelled. Their fearless leader was barely even alive, almost no teeth left in his gaping maw, and every breath a scraping wheeze. Bits of broken glass were embedded in his face, and his impeccable black suit was stained with blood and tears from collar to cuff. And Kaya's face was an ugly grimace, glaring at the man with pure hatred. You see this, your plan is done. You will never have my money, you brute. And you will never hurt all of the innocent people here. She then turned to the crowd of pirates, all of them shocked by the presence she had despite her thin frame and sickly demeanor. Now take your captain and get out of here. Aya then threw the near unconscious body off the cliff where it landed on the rocky ground with a thud. Django rushed up to his captain, even yanking off his glasses. Captain, what in blazes happened here? Django, Kuro said, barely a whisper, is that you? Yes, captain. Please, don't keel over yet. Tell us, how did this happen? Did the Marines catch on? It was that boy in the straw hat. The whole crew flinched in terror, looking at Luffy again. This kid did that to their captain. You all are getting out of here right now, he ordered, before I do that to every last one of you. Seeing how the plan was well and truly fucked, the black cats rushed away in a panicked haze. Django and the pair of guards hauled the broken Captain Kuro on their shoulders before hurriedly raising anchor and sailing away from the Gecko Islands. Luffy kept watch until the galleon was only a blip on the horizon before turning around to face his crew with a smile. Alright, we did it. Great job, you two. We couldn't have done it without you, Makino insisted, pecking him on the cheek. Kuina just crossed her arms in satisfaction, while Nami and Kuina approached with a hefty sack held between them. Where'd you both get that? Oh, like we were gonna pass up the opportunity to lighten up their storeroom. Kuina scoffed, those guys might be idiots, but they still had a haul. And that's one thing we can always agree on, Nami chuckled. Whenever Morganeers have treasure, it's our duty to take it. I suppose that's quite fitting, Kaya said as she approached them, beaming in appreciation. I can't begin to thank you all. If not for you, then I and the entire village would be destroyed. Don't sweat it, Luffy waved off, but we do still need a ship. Say no more. As soon as Mary is fit again, we'll take care of that. Until then, you are all invited as my guests. The entire crew smiled at the thought of sleeping in a cushy mansion and getting a brief reprieve after their latest battle. After all, the real excitement would come once they got the ship. Thanks for watching this video. If you really enjoy this video, like, subscribe, and comment down below, and turn on that bell notification. Don't forget to support and follow the Milo F. Waters for writing that awesome fanfic, and also make sure to comment on this story link in the description. See you in the next video. Goodbye.